Welcome to Tech Charge Podcast, live on a Thursday night. Yeah, we've been jumping around the dates and times. Life gets busy. Everything gets just crazy busy, and we don't always hit on the same night, but we're going to try to get some more consistent when 26 gets around here. So as you see tonight, Chris is on his way. He's not here yet. He had a busy evening in California. And Jace is under the weather, so he's probably listening. I suspect Jace is listening, if not, catch some rest. But tonight we got Zach Carpenter, who's my partner in this Everdrive hybrid Lightning modification test that we're doing right now. That should be a not test here soon. Join us. So how's Zach? How's the world?
Doing pretty good in Tulsa,
Oklahoma. We're both in the middle of the country, so kind of centralized on the channel tonight. So, what do you think about this F-150 Lightning? Zach, what's your thoughts here? Is it? Did they make the right move, or is this a complete bomb?
You give me the first opinion. Oh, why Chris is joining.
Yeah, Chris, you just jumped in here. Why don't you be the first opinion? We know you've got an opinion on this subject. Did Ford bomb this, or are they making the right move?
Oh man, yes.
I hear you. Yes,
it is.
It seems like in the Lightning community, on the forums and on the Facebook groups and stuff, we are seeing overwhelmingly, I hate this. I can't believe they're doing this. I must be in the minority because I don't hate that they're pivoting to an EREV. I sure wish they would leave it as an option. I think, Chris, you've made that point a time or two. Leave it as an option so you can still buy a full battery. But I don't hate the EREV for those of us that tow and actually would use that. I'm not a gas fan and I don't want to go back to that, but I think there's going to be a use case for it, and I think it's going to sell a lot more trucks.
Martin, you're the one person that needs it right away.
Wants it. I don't like spending as much time as we spend on the road. So I would rather do what we're doing in our project, but I know why Ford is doing what they're doing. It makes sense.
And I still think there's a small chance that Ford might do exactly what we're doing. Just use their patent that they already have. I mean...
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a possibility. They could just
So for those listening, Ford does have an active patent on an in-bed either battery or generator. I think it specifically calls out a toolbox shaped generator. So they may be doing or maybe just applying what they've already had the patent on. We don't know. They said an EREV. Chris, do you know any details at all about this? Have you heard any inside scoop on what the EREV configuration is going to be like?
I'm not even convinced that they know.
No, I don't think they know either.
So going back to some earnings calls, they had spoken more along the lines of the Super Duty that, Jim had talked about that these big vehicles just weren't a good fit for battery electric because of what they needed, but that he absolutely saw where, the things like the Expedition or the Super Duties or those types of things would be an EREV. And that totally makes sense to me, and to have it as an option. And so I think somewhere in the vault, there's an engineer that has conceptual drawings and has that out there. But do I think that they have sourced parts and, partners to make any of this stuff at all? I don't think so. And so I'm just convinced that that they're going to figure this out, that their main priority is the universal platform, and that is where all their efforts are going, and they're in no hurry to do anything else politically or any other way. There's no need for them to. So but they got to do something with all these battery plants, and they got to do something, they're pivoting on everything, right? So Tennessee, it's heartbreaking, right? Because from my standpoint, it was only a couple of years ago that the thought was, we're going to have this amazing T3 that none of us have seen, right? Like we never got to see this T3, this precious thing that we all wanted with this great software that Doug Field was going to reveal, this guy that we got from Apple and Tesla, the chosen one, the Jedi, right? That was here to unite the world, to bring balance to the Force. And, he was supposed to bring balance to the Force, not destroy it. And I mean, if there was ever an Anakin Skywalker moment, and so then he instead takes this Tennessee plant that was supposed to be purpose built to build these electric vehicles, and it's literally gonna build gas. I mean, could you add more insult to injury than to take this pristine, palace to electric vehicles that was supposed to be the blue oval city and convert it to a gas-powered juggernaut to build nothing electric at all? I mean,
I agree, Chris. I agree. The only problem I have with it is 100,000 of us chose it, and quadruple that choose that gas every quarter. What do they sell? 400,000 a year or 400,000 a quarter? Gas Lightning or gas
a year? Yeah.
So 4 times that many people every year buy gas trucks. So the proof's in the pudding. The gas is still what the majority of America wants, or the world, if you want to go through there. But it's a use case based thing. The Lightning has a use case, and for those that it fits in, it is awesome. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it has range limitations, but there's a lot of people, 100,000 of us that, most of those guys like it. I know there are some people who jumped to the Silverado, and some people who had problems with their Lightning, Chris, and had to, but it's funny. You had a lot of problems early on, and what are you still driving? I mean, the Lightning, it's still the best truck for most use cases.
Well, it's the best truck for 80+% of everybody. It just convincing them that it is the problem.
Yeah, I think what is concerning to me is how did you get it so wrong, fellas? Like, I'd love to sit down and understand the numbers behind the scenes. Not that it would ever happen. Not that they would ever be transparent. It would sure be a breath of fresh air for someone to come out. And I don't know why business doesn't do this more often, because I think people would respect it. And I think one of the things people used to love about Jim Farley and why he garnered so much respect across all the different brands really was because he was really transparent and honest so often. And we talk about his experience in China and driving the Xiaopeng, and talked about the importance of getting the Tesla network, and just talked about what was coming. And I feel like he was right about all of it. I'd really love to know if he meant it. Because then, recently he talked about he was forced to make these EVs. And that kind of rubbed me wrong about how he talked about it. So I'd love to know what he truly believes and what he's saying to placate people, what he felt forced to do and what he wanted to do, because he talked about he didn't want to make boring vehicles. He wanted to make exciting vehicles. And then he's had slips of the tongue numerous times. And on one hand, I think that is why they don't want him to speak. I've invited him on this podcast a number of times in a number of ways, and I don't think that he will ever accept, and I don't think Ford would let him. We're not a big enough place, and I don't.
Sure.
I think it would be great if they would just
but
get.
There are podcasts that he could be on that are big enough that like that. But I agree. It'd be interesting to know, what does Jim drive to work every day? What does some of the top execs drive to work? Are they driving Lightnings or not?
It's just funny because now you see all of his posts are about the Bronco and about all these other gas-powered things, and for so long it was about the Lightning. Recent faux pas. He was at an event where he said the Mustang would never be electrified, which was an odd slip up. Fed into the crowd that said the Mach. Yeah.
Now I will say, a lot of people don't feel like that's a Mustang, and I understand why they did it. You know, it is a marketing genius because people like the name, and if you're not a true diehard, you know, new edge 5.0 Fox body, even back in the 60s Mustang enthusiast, you're driving a Mustang. I mean, that's a cool Ford deal. Now, it's not a Mustang in a traditional sense. You know, that car probably could have been named any of the other names that Ford has had through the years and rebranded, you know, a Comet or something like that. And it probably would have sold just as well. And I understand why they did it. But I got to tell you, I'm not completely on. I mean, when the Lightning came back out, I don't know if anybody knows my history. I'm a Lightning fan from the day they started making them back in '93. I've had 2 of those. I've had 5 of the second gen from '99 to '04. And when I heard that Ford was building an electric Lightning, I was pissed, you know, just to be blunt. I immediately started looking for a 21 F150 2-door 4-wheel drive that I could Whipple supercharge and lower. That was what I felt like Ford should have done, because that's a 700 horse supercharged daily driver that would pay homage to the original truck, which is exactly, Chris, what you're seeing out in Salina. That's what they're building, and it's an awesome truck.
It is. Yep.
That went that way, and I'm not going to drag the story out, but that went that way until I drove my first 22 Lariat. And that was not when they first come out, but shortly after, and that was it. I mean, everything changed for me that day.
Yeah, I think I like I said before, I'm not against EREV. I think EREV has its place. I often tell people I'm about the right tool for the right job, and I need a step ladder to get around the house, change light bulbs, reach high places. That's what my Lightning does. You need a ladder to get up on your roof. I am not going to get up on my roof. That would not be a smart move. That's not what I do. But for people that need to be getting up on their roof, they need an EREV. They need to be able to do they need that type of ladder.
But you know, there's that argument of what should it be a half ton? You know, should the EREV really be a Super Duty? Whereas, you know, why not a diesel? Like, if you're going to make an EREV, there's all these conversations that come about when you start talking about an EREV half ton.
I don't know what would be the more efficient platform, like whatever diesel would be. When I think of diesel, I think of diesel generators that rev at a consistent RPM and don't need. So when I think the most efficient, and again, I'm not, man, you educate me. You're more close to this than I would be. If I was going to make an EREV, my instinct based on gen sets and when I think of that, I think diesel generators, constant RPM, lower maintenance, more efficiency. That would seem to be the EREV place to be. But I don't want to have to add DEF. I don't want to add DEF at all. Do you have to add DEF to a Super Duty or no?
Yes. Super Duties have diesel exhaust.
All diesels have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I didn't know if that was just an
the small
RV
platform
thing.
stuff doesn't, like, you get there's some small under 70 horse like a Bobcat and stuff that they're not DEF. They can do tier 4 compliancy without having DEF, but the majority of what you're going to see now, and especially on highway, is going to have DEF.
So if you made an EREV, would it necessitate DEF as well? You'd have to
probably.
Like, to me, that would be a deal breaker. Like, nobody wants to deal with that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not talking about the use of the world that's used to that, maybe from driving a Super Duty. I'm talking about the practicality of the mass market that you're trying to appeal to. You got to simplify it.
Super Duty drivers are willing to deal with DEF, or there's probably a handful that like the fact that it's clean exhaust. I mean, there's a reason they did it, but they like to deal with, they deal with DEF because they get the power stroke. They get the engine, and you can pull 30,000 pounds and you don't, do it all day long. But like Zach probably has a pretty good opinion on this, because you've been around generators and big commercial stuff in that regard for a long time.
Yeah. So Simon on Trucked Up EVs, on his video that came out like during the out of spec one that you were on the day the announcement was made, Chris, he hinted at the end of his video that Ford is possibly making the same mistake that they made with the Lightning right now, in that they are just throwing a number out there that's 10 more than the Ram Charger, or the Ram, and that is not the towing range. If you want to do Martin Meek towing, you're going to cut that in half or worse. So
Sure.
think of this Lightning, as this EREV Lightning, as having 300 miles of range when towing. And then all EV owners, just like us, we're going to want at least 100 kilowatt hour battery in this thing if we were going to have a chance at buying it, so we can drive it as our daily driver in electric only. And if that's the case, then there's 200 miles of the range in the battery. So now you're down to like 200 miles of range based on the generator and for towing. And so the numbers are going to be misunderstood, and they're on the track to make the same mistakes which is probably the same mistakes that Stellantis is dealing with right now. That's probably why we haven't seen the
Rev.
The Rev yet. Yeah.
I worry that Ford is perpetually behind, and I hope that they've got some secret. They talk about the skunk works. So my grandparents are from not Pensacola. Well, I do have grandparents in Pensacola, Florida. My other grandparents were from Palmdale. So I had both of them military families in that kind of area. And right out there was the true skunk works, where my dad grew up, out there with Lockheed Martin doing test flights of the SR-71 Blackbird. And what made the skunk works truly the skunk works is that you never knew what was going on. And they were already testing these things before it was ever revealed. And when it was revealed, it was state of the art, blowing you away 10 years ahead. And having grown up a kid of the 80s and knowing what a true skunk works was, and then hearing that term used, it sparked my imagination for T3 and for all of these things. And maybe it's just because I'm bitter now and I feel scorned, and because I'm able to admit here that I'm being petty, and my feelings are hurt, because rumors were out there that this was going to happen, right? Wall Street Journal, a bunch of others said this was going to happen. Then Ford went out there and they showed the STX at Electrify Expo. Then people at Ford reassured that no, like, this hasn't been canceled. We're going to come up in Q1 and restart. And then literal employees of Ford posted and said that they had ordered 26 Lightnings, which I, as a supporter, forwarded and mocked others like the Wall Street Journal and said, hey, you couldn't have possibly ordered a 26 Ford. There is no 26 Ford. How is that possible? And now I'm an asshole because all these other people were right. And I'd love to know, because there's some people that internally in Ford, would message me or make comments that they've known about this since November, and that this was just not publicly said, but that internally in the building it was known. So I'm out here being a supporter of the brand, and they're letting me do it. Now, did they know? Did they not know? I don't know, right? And I'm wondering, how far behind are these guys? How far behind is their software? Are they really skunk works, or are they using they've used the "this is our Model T moment" twice now, and they called the Lightning their Model T moment, if you recall.
Yep.
And now they're going to call this new thing the Model T moment, and we haven't seen it, so I'm really curious what it's going to be. But we know that it's going to be a $30,000 mid-size, 400 volts, maybe. I'm speculating, how fast is it going to charge? Let's see the details. What's the range going to be?
Compete with the Chevy Bolt.
If that's what it's going to be, that is not an SR-71 Blackbird, and that is what a Skunk Works team is supposed to be working on.
$30,000 doesn't get you that. That's the problem, And we're talking about the universal platform for a moment. Yeah, this is going to be, I think, a series of different vehicles that they can build on the same platform, like the Equinox, and what's the other brand, Toyota, or that's building on the same one. Anyway, I think we're going to see that, but the Lightning replacement, it's good to me. It's going to be an F-150, and I'd go so far as to say, and Lightning Mike saying it's not going to be that big a battery. I agree. I don't think it will. I think the truck is going to have no bigger than a 60 kilowatt battery, probably a 50. And I think driving that is cost, because they can build and buy engines much cheaper than they can build and buy batteries. That has been proven. If you look at the retail replacement cost of the battery and you try to back down all the levels to their cost, it's expensive. But if you can get to a 50 kilowatt battery, it gives you 100 miles of range in an F-150, and then put a V6 or to me, it ought to be the 2.3 or the 2.7 EcoBoost engine with a flywheel mounted generator that can totally support that truck without the battery. And you're going to have the performance, because the battery is going to supplement the power that the 2.7 or the 2.3 doesn't have for a full-size truck, but it doesn't need to. Generators aren't designed to have peak supporting power. They're designed to be able to just flow at one nice RPM. So when you need that peak power, it'll draw from that battery. And then as you're going on flats, it'll have enough excess from the engine mounted generator to just sit there and recharge it. If you look at what Dodge Stellantis has told us about the REV, which formerly the Ram Charger, it's a V6, a big V6 with a 130 kilowatt generator. You really don't need a battery at all with that size of generator. The
Which
Lightning
is so
pulls about 30 to 40 kilowatts just cruising down the highway at normal speeds, 70, 75 miles an hour. If you tow a big trailer, you're going to double that, because you cut your mileage in half. You're going to get to 60 to 70. And if you pull a big trailer fast, I have seen 80 sustained upwards of 100 kilowatts. So a 130 kilowatt generator will do it. But
that's so on brand for Dodge, right? Just to go over the top with their stuff.
But it was not on brand for Chevy to come out with a 200 plus kilowatt battery and just kill it. But they're brute forcing this thing, because that truck is not efficient. The Lightning is more efficient than the Silverado, even though it's not as slippery.
Here's the problem that Ford will have, and that Stellantis is probably having, is that no automotive engine that's been designed that's even anywhere in that ballpark of size is designed or tested to be ran at 100 kilowatts continuously.
Right.
It's the efficiency of gas engines is less than 50%. Imagine 50 or 60 kilowatts of heat you having to get rid of.
Yep.
Sustained. It's ridiculous. And
it only takes 35 to push a gas F-150 down the road. You're only pulling, what is that in horsepower numbers?
Well, but that's the thing, is that they're trying to say, hey, this is good for towing 14,000 pounds. And somebody takes off towing 14,000 pounds on an hour trip, trying to go up a couple thousand feet in elevation. They're going to need like 100 kilowatts sustained for over an hour. And that is impossible for a small engine.
That's right. And I know that they were talking about the Super Duty. We've brought that up a couple of times tonight, Chris. I don't know how much validity there was early on. I know that TFL Truck had talked about them possibly doing a 5-liter with a big enough battery to do 30,000 pounds. And the rumor mill was that they were having trouble with thermals, meaning to keep everything cool enough to get rid of the heat enough to be able to let that truck work like it needs to compete against the 6.7 Power Stroke. Because when you get to the end of this, and why did we all pick a Lightning versus a gas? And I think everybody who has driven a Lightning or has driven a gas or driven both, you know what you picked, and we all have a little bit different reason. But for me, to go back to a diesel is an option. It's not an option I want to pick. I don't like the dealing with that and all that the diesel truck it brings to me. I like a lot better the electric powertrain. And when you throw a gas engine in there, you're complicating it both ways. You've got an engine there when you need it. So I think the highlight reel, the EREV Lightning is going to be awesome. I don't know an application that it's going to be that great. It's not a diesel pickup. It's not a heavy truck, but then it's trying to compete with the long range towing of the gas truck. Well, Chris, you bought a Lightning because you can charge it at home on solar cheaply. I mean, that's the number one reason. It's not a cheap truck. You spend a lot of money on your truck. So yours is and you love the power and the you know, whatever. But if you bought an EREV Lightning and it doesn't cost you any less to drive than it does a gas, why are you driving it? You know, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think that that's where I'd love to believe that there is a team there that is 3 steps ahead and they're just keeping it close to the vest. Yep. And we just haven't seen it yet. And so it worries me as a fan of Ford. And it seems to me that strategically, everything is about volume. So when you look at what they need to be doing, and really why the Lightning didn't work is because they never reached the volumes they were supposed to reach. They talked about early on that there was supposed to be 3 shifts. And it was funny because one of the early arguments that Jason and I ever got into was about them closing and redoing the assembly line, because it was originally, you know, they were expanding to 3 shifts and trying to make it so that it could fit 3 shifts. And it just seemed like a waste because there was no demand for that. But Ford was convinced there was going to be, and then it never happened. And they had shut down the assembly line a couple different times to remodel it and get it into a place that would be able to sustain 3 shifts. And then it didn't occur. And then they had to shrink it down eventually from, you know, instead of going from 2 to 3, they shrunk it from 2 to 1. And that's all it ever really was able to accomplish. You know, they had, you know, 20 something thousand. They had one good year of 30 something thousand, then back to 20 again. Yep. And they were very transparent about how they got 17. They had enough ZEV credits that every time they sold a Lightning, they could then sell 17 gas F150s. Yeah. And I think the key was that 100,000 seems to be the number that keeps popping up. 100,000 is what sells for the Maverick. Once you break 100,000, they make enough at scale that you can distribute the cost and you can get to a profitable margin.
Are you talking about 100,000 per year?
Per year. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I think that's why the Mach-E is not canceled.
Now they don't sell 100,000 per year.
No,
but they're making them in Mexico.
Right. But it's also more than 100,000 total for sure.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So they must be close enough there, or they must have enough of, you know, there's got to be some reason. There's got to be some other reason there as far as battery, something. There's got to be something there keeping the Mach-E alive. And yeah, they, you know, Colby here talking about $100,000 trucks. A big part of the problem, you know, was originally supposed to be a $40,000 truck. That's what I signed up for.
Cybertruck,
same way for the Cybertruck, which is also why it's not selling, by the way. You know, at least we forget that the Lightning, despite everything that we're talking about, is the best-selling EV truck to ever exist. And Rivian's not even close. Cybertruck, for 1 year, that 1 year, it beat Lightning slightly, I think by maybe 1,000 vehicles for the 1 year.
Cybertruck beat Lightning for 1 quarter, didn't it? I think 1 quarter it beat it.
1 quarter. Yeah.
They're struggling severely right now with the Cybertruck because the price is too high. If you could go buy a new all-wheel drive Cybertruck for $49,995 right now, I think they'd sell more of them. And I'm surprised that they haven't dropped the prices down to do that. I read that article where the SpaceX is, you know, they're selling a lot of them to themselves so they can use them. And it's so polarizing. I mean, we can get off on the Cybertruck, but the Cybertruck for a lot of people, they won't buy it because of look. If you had taken a Toyota Tacoma and a Ram and mashed them together and made this cool looking truck and called it a Cybertruck, they probably would have sold the crap out of them at the right price point.
There was a bunch of renders out there of these aerodynamic looking Tesla trucks that looked more traditional in shape. And man, if they would have made it look like that, they probably would have sold 100,000 trucks.
Oh my gosh.
If they would have made it at a $50,000, $60,000 price point is the other thing. It needed to be affordable. Lightning at least has some affordable models. I'm working on a video that I'm hoping to get posted tomorrow night about what the value of these trucks is going to look like. And I've talked to a couple different dealer friends. And there's a question from here. It's talking about what do we think about the Mach-E 2025 Premium. And one of the things that stuck out to me is the same conversation, whether it was Mach-E or Lightning. My dealer friends all tell me the same thing. And I talked to 4 different dealer folks that I know. One in Tennessee that I bought my truck at. One in Southern California that is an owner of a Ford store down there. 2 here in the Bay Area. All of them universally told me the same thing. The big seller for the Lightning is the Flash and the XLT. The big seller for the Mach-E is the, I want to call it the standard, but it's not the standard. It's the, what do they call the
Select?
The Select. Thank you. I knew it started with an S.
Yep.
And that the mix is like 60% Flash XLT, 60% Select. Then you go, the next level up is your, your Lariat and your,
they're
Premium.
They're so close too, Chris. I mean, you look at, we're sitting here with 3 guys with 3 different trucks. Chris has a Platinum. I've always had Lariats, and Zach's an XLT fan. And honestly, I don't think any one of us want to move out of our truck. And keep
in mind, my Platinum though was $70,000. Like I went to Tennessee to find a $70,000 Platinum, so I'm paying Flash prices for.
But you could buy a Flash in the 50s if you'd have looked hard enough.
Probably.
At certain times, they had some discounts going. That's like we talked about that Mach-E Premium. You know, there are some times when we had the $7,500 tax credit and some of that happened, you could get a good buy on a Lightning or a Mach-E.
Yeah, and that's the key. And to answer the question, the Premium, I think the Premium is far and away a better riding experience
I like the
than the
Premium.
Select.
We own a Mach-E GT Performance Edition, and if I replaced it, my wife wants the green color that Sergio has.
That green is great.
I want one of those in a GT or with the appearance package, or a Premium with the appearance package. She doesn't care anything about the performance, but I like that GT nose, and we like the wheels. So to me, that would be a good one for us, because for me, I'm building them, so it's a little different. I can buy one wrecked, but if you're just going to the Ford dealer or the used market, is it worth the extra to get a little bit more power that you can use for party tricks? You know, the seats aren't that much. The seats are actually in the GT Performance Edition not as comfortable as they are in a Select or the California Route 1 or any of those.
Yeah, I think the big thing about the GT, and even this you got to be careful about, because the GT used to always come with a Magna Ride.
Yep.
And now they've changed it so that the Magna Ride is an option. So even if you get the GT, you got to make sure it's got the Magna Ride, because that's an option now.
Yep.
I think the 25 is going to be better than the 26, because the 25
it's a little stiff.
Has the frunk. The Magna Ride is stiff.
The Magna Ride's a little stiff. I've been in both the Premium and the GT Performance Edition.
No, I think the Premium
Magna Ride's a little stiff. So you got to like that sport suspension. So if you're used to driving an air ride Tesla, you know, a Model S or even an X, and then you go get in a GT Performance Edition, it's going to feel rigid. But I own a lot of Teslas that we go through the run through the shop, and that car doesn't compare to the rigidity, the feel, the exhilaration you get out of a Mach-E. It's the same difference in getting out of a gas F-150 to a Lightning is coming from a Tesla to we have a Model 3 here that's for sale. Totally different experience in that Model 3 than it is when you're in a Mach-E.
So I think to answer the question, the Premium's awesome. I think the 2025 is great because it still has the frunk. You know, like the 26, they took the frunk out unless you pay for it. I think a 2025.
But Premium, we don't use ours.
Get the right price. You got to get the price though.
We don't use the front because it's not. My wife had a 23 Lightning. You guys saw me build it for her on the channel. That ended up being my truck when we moved her to the Mach-E, and that's the one thing that she misses a lot about the Lightning is the frunk. Number one, it powers. You push a button, it opens for you. You throw your groceries in. You don't have to. It actually holds enough to matter. So she doesn't use the frunk on the Mach-E ever.
Is it because
you got to do that weird
small?
Push down thing like a Tesla?
You should get the aftermarket powered frunk.
I would, but it's not big enough for her to really move the needle. That's the other thing. So we go back to EREV. Are they going to put the engine in there? You know, that's going to wreck it for me. So Zach and I have had this conversation a bunch. You know, it's not really a pivot time, but talking about Everdrive and what we're doing. So the number one thing that we have discussed is, what do we want to use for the power? So if you throw like on the EREV Lightning, if you throw a big engine in the front and you lose the frunk, you've killed half the value of the truck to me. I use that frunk on my road trips consistently. And Zach, you use yours to work out of. It's loaded with tools all the time. And they're secure, they're dry. Nobody really knows it's a frunk, so they're not trying to break in your truck and steal your stuff. To me, the frunk is game changer if they kill it.
Let's talk about how are they going to make an EREV Lightning any cheaper than a Lightning?
So I think the question on that you can't answer today. Well, one, I would love to know if Ford knows, and based on their past performance, I don't know if they know. But I think the big question, they don't tell us anything. I would love to know what their battery chemistry is going to be, because in theory, if they were to use the CATL LFP batteries that they're going to use in their universal, then in theory, if you pump out a whole bunch of universal, if you're doing 100,000 universal vehicles, right, with a bunch of LFPs, and you're pumping them out of your factories, now you're at scale. LFP is already cheaper. You scale it, that's cheaper. Now you're going to throw a 50 kilowatt hour, 60 kilowatt hour, whatever it is. That's going to be cheaper than the 98 or the 121 or the 131. And it's LFP and it's scaled. So I can totally see that driving the cost down if you're using LFP. So there's a number of ways I can see that going where that could be, if that's their plan. And I would love to know more about what they do in China as far as their EREVs. Are they using kind of traditional? You guys are talking about like the EcoBoost. Is that even the right engine to use? That type of engine? Like we're talking about traditional engines. Is there a totally different type of motor or engine that would be a better choice for an EREV?
If you look at commercial generation, and I say commercial, even light duty commercial generation, diesel engines are much better to hold at one speed all the time. You know, you talk about offshore for marine, for offshore stuff, diesel's better. They're designed to run at that 1 RPM and hold it all the time. They're tuned and designed. No, I mean, I agree that and Zach, you can chime in here too, but I don't think that the motors that we have today are designed to run at 1800 RPM under that kind of load all the time and be efficient
and last. There's no way. If you get people buying that thing and thinking they can tow nonstop with it, and they're running that generator and engine at just like 100 kilowatts sustained for hours, I just don't think they're going to get the longevity out of that. And they're also going to have to be using an expensive water-cooled e-machine of some type as a generator. An automotive, lightweight, small, that's going to cost money. That's not cheap. So that's basically like another drive unit.
Yeah, we that's why I think we're seeing that the Ram Rev is, you know, not to market for one, for those reasons, but number two, why they touted a 3.5, I think it was a 3.5 V6, way more engine than you need. But in order to have that engine have enough power to have any sort of longevity, it had to be big, which the Rev will not have a frunk because of that. It's way too big.
Yeah, I think, you know, if it's me and I think the biggest mistake they could make is to not put the best powertrain and technology into an EREV that has been proven out where it's already being used. They should look to China for the type of motors that are being used, whatever that setup is. I think they should maintain the frunk. Hopefully in a different way than Scout seemingly is planning to do it, because Scout, for whatever reason of engineering, maybe because of where they positioned it or whatever that is, their towing rating is half.
Well, I think that's part of it. Chris says there's twofold there. So yes, they put that engine under the back end, so you've lost ability to have the balanced weight. But number two, it's exactly what Zach's saying. The engine's small enough, it just can't take that for that long.
It could probably tow just like the other one, but if somebody bought it, and people will, and try to tow nonstop with it, then they're just going to wreck that engine. We're going to wear it out in like way earlier than the warranty time would be.
Yeah.
So I would love to know more. You know, I would love for Ford to come out, and I'm not convinced they even know. Like, I would love for them, because, you know, we are here in about to be 26. They're still a year and a half away from releasing that universal platform. Then probably be who knows how many years. You notice they had no details about this.
Yeah,
this platform, nothing. Right? And
the Rev, when it announced, at least, or the Ram Charger, years ago, there was quite a bit of detail. I mean, at least what they were trying to say, here's where we're headed. And I don't mind that Ford is trying to pivot, because change is the only thing consistent in this world anymore. But they didn't give us anything. You know, the Lightning is canceled. Chris, do we know, is the production line done? Or are they just selling those 1,000 trucks that are remaining and then that's it? Or are they continuing to build through 26?
No, they're done. It's shut down. They're gonna convert that thing over, I guess, to EREV. They say they're going to use that same factory. They've taken those workers and they've moved those workers to a third shift of F-150 gas. You know, that's they want to get as much profit out of those gas F-150s as they can and pump that production, get those numbers going. And that's what they've done. They've taken all those workers and they've moved them to a third shift of F-150 gas production. So that's where it's at, and that they've kind of idled the plant. And then at some point they'll have to convert it over, and that'll probably take you a year or so to, that's assuming they even figure out what they're going to do with it. And then you've got the Blue Oval LFP CATL partnership that's there in Michigan. So that, you know, works well with the Rouge plant that's right there in Michigan.
Well, there were some cancellations of some of the battery manufacturers.
Yeah.
You know, I know they kind of canceled their contract with them. And what did they do with, was it CATL or no, SK On?
SK On
ended that.
So that's where I'm curious about the future chemistry, is because the CATL one, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but again, we're left to guess because Ford doesn't like to tell you anything. CATL is the LFP partnership, which I think is the better one. They make the better batteries. They have the cool, everything cool you hear out of China is CATL or BYD, but CATL is the very fast charging, very cool LFP technology. The SK On partnership out of Korea is the more traditional NCM chemistry that we're used to using. And that partnership was split. And so Ford will get 2 battery plants in Kentucky. And then SK On will keep the Blue Oval battery plant in Tennessee. So SK On will make batteries for a combination of other automotive manufacturers that need them, as well as for energy storage. And Ford will also now dabble into energy storage. So those will be energy storage batteries. They're not even going to be for automotive. Of course, that could change down the road if they need to, depending on the market conditions. But in the immediate term, they are not going to be used for automotive. They're going to be used for energy storage. Things like 5
megawatt packs. Yeah, I watched a video on this today, speculation, and the guy actually joked that they were going to be making batteries for the Slate truck, which might be a possibility. I mean, Slate has said consistently that they're going to be using Korean-made batteries. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, they'll still be, but fine. I think we need battery production. I think it's good for America and good for us to have these batteries being produced. And then when the time is right, yank that generator out of there and start finding these battery packs. I'm glad they're going to do something with the battery production and keep it moving.
Yeah.
You know,
they're going to have to come up with a better chemistry that's cheaper. LFP is good, but it's still expensive. I mean, we need a more energy dense, less expensive. We're talking like from 100 down to 10. What is that new that battery we saw the other day that was going to drop it to like $10 per kilogram from 100 or something? I can't remember the specs exactly, but we got to get to that before batteries are going to work consistently. And the other problem is the weight. You know, so the Lightning itself, it's tough because it weighs 7,000 pounds. The Chevys are mostly over 9. We really need that weight to get back down to get the efficiency down. You know, you got to put that much raw material in a battery. It creates cost, and it creates excessive inefficiencies, if you put it that way. So like, there's so many on the horizon. You've got solid state, you got lithium air, you've got sodium ion, you've got sodium air. One of those technologies is going to hit, and it's going to hit where they can mainstream it at a cost that'll work. But the headwinds right now that we haven't talked about tonight, the political side of why the Lightning got canceled. I mean, there's no reason to buy a Lightning from a supporting our government. I mean, there's no tax credits, which I never thought we needed in the beginning. I think you build a better truck, people will buy it. That's how my thought has been. That's why I bought it. I didn't buy it because it gave me a tax credit, because I didn't get a tax credit on any of the Lightnings I've ever built. So for me, I did it anyway. I think it's just the fact that, I'm frustrated because it got a bad name because of this EV mandate. And we've talked about that, which isn't real, but it gets shoved down people's throats. If you go to any non-Lightning group or any non-whatever, and you read the comments, which are typically negative on any group, they hate the fact that this Lightning crap or Cybertruck crap, I'm not having that EV crap. It's just like, okay, you look at it for what it is and see if it works for you, because sometimes you need a hammer and the Lightning is a screwdriver, but other times that screwdriver fits that slot so well. Like some of our comments on here tonight, guys have run it for years and put 100,000 miles. Zach, you've got like 120 something on your truck.
130.
Yeah, 130. And it's worked so well, not without a couple hiccups and problems, but
Yeah, but I'm a perfect example of why price is so important, because I came this close to canceling my order when I made my order the week that they unveiled it. And when I found out that I couldn't get the Pro, which is all I could afford, I was going to cancel. I had 3 other engineering friends that promised me and talked me into buying it, saying that they would take it if I couldn't afford it or didn't like it or whatever else. So because they tried to order them too and couldn't, and I got one of the first ones in Tulsa. So and I'm still dealing with a $700 a month payment, which sucks.
And
that's even
you still
with
ended
the
up
tax credit.
And you got the XLT, right?
And I got the XLT standard range.
Standard range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my first one, I had to go. Where do you live, Zach? Sorry,
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. So it's funny because Ford went east to west. So by the time they got to the West Coast, there were no Pros left. And then you guys got the last XLTs for that first round too. I couldn't even get an XLT. So my lowest option was the Lariat standard range without Blue Cruise, without the phone is key. Like I had the stripped down Lariat.
Mm-hmm. I had the stripped down XLT, the 311A package. And
mine was the 511A. Mm-hmm. So what was your XLT? So my Lariat was 69.
52 MSRP.
50, that's a big jump. Okay. And that was before tax credit? That was after?
That was before.
Before.
So I got the 7,500. So I got a good deal. I mean, I felt like I got a really good deal and a really good value. And I dealt with all the struggles that happen with Lightnings, especially SR Lightnings.
Yeah.
I dealt with that the day I tried to drive it 200 miles back home. But me being an electrical engineer and getting the truck because it was an electric truck, I've figured that out good enough. And as we all know, the trucks are so amazing in every aspect except of range, that I don't have any plan to go back. In fact, Martin and I have been discussing how we can, keep Lightnings alive for as long as possible with batteries. So.
Yeah, because eventually this battery situation we talked a few minutes ago about them ending some of these contracts, or whatever, that might mean that there's going to be a shortage of batteries for the service side that we would have plentiful when they're building those. They're going to keep an estimate of how many batteries are going to go bad and try to reserve those. It'll be curious in 2 years if you need a new module or you need a new battery for your Lightning, how hard is that going to be to get? And so
I guarantee you they can statistically figured out, when Lightnings are going to roll out of their warranty, and that compared to their, when they're going to go bad naturally by the statistics they have on ones they've replaced already, that they're probably going to stock up what they think they need, and that's it. They're not going to make anymore.
Yeah, they probably know their failure rate at this point after this many years,
Yep. Yeah.
The
And based on some of the comments and some of the degradation that we've seen, these trucks are going to be 200,000 or 300,000 miles before they're ready to be even think about replacing batteries.
it'll be interesting to see how long that they last. Because there are so many with so many miles, and I haven't seen much degradation. It's not like the Teslas that seem to degrade quite a bit down into the 70s and 80s as they age.
Yeah, we've got a Model 3 with like 74%, and it's got 140 on it, and it's a 22.
Yeah.
I'm
So, I
three
mean,
and a half years old with 130,000 miles, and my state of health is 93.5.
Yeah. And another comment about would have had to cancel if they couldn't get their Pro. I think the only reason I was able to afford it was the pricing was so crazy at that time that my old minivan that I had, the dealer gave me $20,000 for the minivan. So I was able to put the 20,000 down from the minivan, the 7,500 incentive, and then California gives you another 2,500 state incentive. So when all that was said and done, it was $30,000 by the time I stacked all that, trading in the minivan. So was able to make it affordable, and get it to a point that with my wife agreeing to it, we were able to stretch and get. And then that original Lightning, I also, because the financing back then was so crazy, I had like a 0.9% credit union. It was like an EV credit union at a 0.9% interest rate for a 7-year loan. So it got my payment really low, which was crazy, but that's how I also didn't have, like you were saying, a $700 payment. So, I did everything I could because I wanted it that bad. And it's that's just how good of a truck it is, though. It's like all the things that we're talking about, right? It doesn't have any vampire drain. It doesn't have severe degradation. It can last into the hundreds of thousands of miles. They did so many things great and so many things right with it. It's got a nice flat charging curve. It's got a great frunk. It has incredible acceleration. It's got a locking differential. It's got, just so many things that were done correctly. So it's heartbreaking, right, to have it canceled instead of just, adding to it.
So that's why I think they've got the Lightning. They nailed the Lightning hardware wise. We all know they suck in software across the board, but they nailed the hardware. If they wanted to flip a switch and turn the RevC factory back on right now, they can make 26s immediately. So all they would have to do is a little bit of engineering on a generator port, and they could start making Lightnings again with a removable generator. It would be so easy for them. So
71,000 from Lightning Mike out there in Colorado.
That's and Mike, you can get a car scanner and an OBD2 adapter and just look at the state of health and see. I'm guessing, because I sold my first 22 Lightning with 70,000 miles to my brother-in-law, and it had like 97.5%, which is interesting because that's exactly what my 45,000 mile 23 has now.
Was that an ER?
Yeah, they were both ERs. So
somebody mentioned just recently that if you take statistically an SR and an ER and you compare them apples to apples, the ER is going to have less degradation than the SR because it's been cycled less.
Yeah.
As far as it's, to its extremes. So the ERs are going to experience even better than the SRs.
So I'm curious about something on those OBD2 scanner numbers. We were just talking the other day, Martin, about they did that battery swap of the SR into an ER up here in, was it Seattle?
Alex did it.
Yeah,
but there's been a bunch of guys that done it, and I want to bring this up eventually, but not yet. Like Pat has done it.
My question on that, though, is when you look at his screen, he had a module failure, yet it still showed it with a 99% state of health. Can you explain why that is?
Well, module failures, and Zach, you probably could speak to this as much as more than I can. Module failures aren't failures unless there is an actual short. If they get outside the voltage range that Ford sets the limits on, then it will show as a failure. So Tesla does the same kind of thing.
I saw this, what you're talking about. Somebody recently was like, they were very confused because they're like, what the heck? My battery will only charge to like 60%. I've got a module failure, but my state of health is still showing high. My explanation for that is that the state of health is a very long-term calculated thing. Okay. It doesn't change fast. It shouldn't. Because what it's doing is it's the BMS is looking at its Coulomb counter over long periods of time, and it's saying, okay, well, this week after 5 full charges, I got this much energy from this difference in SOCs, and now 3 or 4 weeks down the road, it looks at the same thing and it sees this minute change. It got a little bit less of energy from going, say, 10% to 90%. And so that's how it knows and calculates state of health. Is it looks at the Coulomb counter over long swings of the battery over long periods of time. So just having a one battery module fail, that's not necessarily going to affect the state of health number at all. That the state of health, though, we don't truly know how Ford calculates or what goes into it. So that's another reason we don't know. We can't really ever going to be able to say what that exactly means. It's taken in the industry in general terms to mean the percentage of your battery capacity you have left from when it was new. That is pretty generally understood, that what that number means. But again, we don't really know exactly how Ford's calculating it or what it means.
Can I trust when I go and I charge to 100% and I look at my scanner and it'll tell me how many kilowatt hours it has in the pack and how many it displays? Can I trust those numbers?
Yeah, those should be very, very accurate, because like I said, the BMS has had lots of experience with your battery. It's had lots of cycles, and it's been keeping track of that for a long time.
In fact, that's what we're using with Everdrive. We're going to use those exact numbers to give you a more accurate GOM. Because, for instance, if you throw a generator in your truck and you extend the range of it, the factory GOM and the factory efficiency do not change yet. We're working on that. But so we have to build an external GOM that looks at those numbers we're talking about to know how far you can drive when you add in this extra energy.
So Zach, what did you say your state of health was?
93.5.
So when you go and you fill yours to 100%, do you get like 90,
Yes.
3 kilowatt hours?
It's like 92, 93 is what if I look at my actual battery SOC.
Okay.
Yeah, now you don't want to look. You certainly don't want to look at what you get from the station, and you don't want to look on your app, because you say, like, my truck's an ER at 131, I have 97.5% degradation or retained, so I get about 128.5. But it sometimes will put from 0 to 100. I've seen it put 130 in there because there's losses, through that whole stuff as you charge. So you have to actually look at the battery chemistry, the battery data on the car scanner or one of those apps.
A lot of videos, even some by out of spec, have been done and shown that the Coulomb counters on chargers are grossly wrong. Like, they're not calibrated right. Some people you've seen, like, they've posted like, what the heck, this charger just gave me 170 kilowatt hours when their truck is an ER, so that's not right. And Tom Malogany just did a video, or I would just watch the video of his, where he took a 30,000 mile Lightning and did a test that he did to see if it had degraded, and it was just driving a loop test, and it got 15 more miles from a 0 to 100% than it did when it was brand new, just because probably a 5 mile an hour difference in wind, or something. So that's not a good
There's
test.
so many variables that can hurt you on range. It's uncanny. Guys putting the Toyo EV3 AT, they say they don't hurt it. Some guys do, some guys don't. All that plays in. The road you're driving on, the quality of the highway that you're driving on will affect it.
So the other number that we look at in Car Scanner, the module variation, I've noticed that I don't think that is reflected in the state of health at all, because that varies a lot. Like, I've seen mine as high as 4%. I just look at the percentage number, not the voltage number. And again, we don't know how even Ford is calculating that percentage number, but we would guess that it's the highest one to the lowest one and the percentage difference there.
That's what it shows in FDRS, Zach. Is that
Okay.
exactly what you
Yeah.
just said?
So I have that up on my car scanner screen, that and my state of health, and I just keep an eye on them constantly. And I've seen my variance in percent be above 4. But every night when I charge to 100, I've been noticing recently that it's below 1. And so that has to do with balancing. And when the BMS balances the battery, when it charges up, it really probably is doing most of its balancing work right at the top.
Yes.
So and specifically at the very top. And this is why a lot of people say you should charge your truck to 100% every once in a while, because it really gives the BMS a chance to fully balance the batteries. And that's when you're going to see your lowest variance numbers, is when you charge to 100%. So I do think that is valid advice, is every once in a while you should just charge your truck to 100%
Yep.
and let it
Agreed.
balance, let it fully
And
balance.
Tesla's the same way. So I know we've got Paul listening too, but I've talked with him about this a bunch of times. But you take a Tesla that has not been charged to 100 and try to charge it to 100, it's going to stop at 96, 97, 98%. It just doesn't go any higher. But if you continue to do that, it will eventually bleed resist off the voltage variations, that number you're talking about, Zach, and eventually you'll cry. I had my 31,000 mile S85 Tesla that I had built here that went to 98%. I couldn't get it to 100, and we just kept 100% charging it, driving it down. But by the time that car sold and was gone, it was at 100%, which will allow the variation to put the energy in. So it'll stop when the top volt gets full. So you may have other cells in there that
It
are
will
lower.
not overcharge any cell. That's the no-no.
Yes.
Is that's what the BMS is there for, to protect overcharging. So it will not overcharge a cell. And I've spoke on this before to Simon and his Trucked Up channel. I've looked at this and witnessed this just recently. The balancing wires in the battery, which are the wires that it uses to balance the cells, they're very, very small. They're like 24 gauge wire. So you're only going to be putting like 5 to 10 amps through those wires maximum. And so that's all the power the BMS has to control cells that are getting high too quickly. And it just does it by switching in a resistor. So it basically adds resistance to burn off power on cells that are getting too high. That's called a passive balancing, and that's the way most balancers are, and that's the way the Lightning is, I believe. I don't believe that the Lightning does any kind of active balancing. That's where it can take power from certain cells and put it into others. That requires a much more complex BMS, and by the size of the BMS in the battery, it's very small. I don't think it's doing anything but resistive, passive balancing. So that would make total sense that you need to charge your truck to 100% every once in a while. I'd say once a month at least. And that number, that variance number is not, the health does not reflect that variance number. You can have a very bad balance number, and your health can still be great.
So let me ask you kind of two extremes here. You were talking about the 100% thing. So whenever I go to a 49er game, I typically charge my truck to 100%. Because I know I'm going to drive it to Santa Clara, and then I know I'm going to drive it home, and that kicks me down for the rest of the week. So one of the things I notice on that extreme is when I charge it to 100, I drive for a
while at 100.
A while at 100. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to explain it.
There's more at the top, but that percent number is not real accurate. Zach and I were just talking about that on a call earlier today about what goes on at the actual. So Zach, you can explain. There's 3 different values but
it's because you're looking at the SOC displayed. The SOC displayed is what you're looking at in your instrument cluster, and that number is a funny number that's massaged by Ford to include things like temperature and maybe some other things that it suspects that are going to affect the SOC.
But it only seems to do it at 100%. Like no other number seems to do that.
It only does it at 100% because, and this, I've experienced this in my truck a lot in Oklahoma. When you charge to 100%, typically your battery is cooler, and so it charges to 100%, and then as soon as you get in it to take off, it starts to warm up more, And that warm up, that temperature is baked into that SoC displayed. So what you're doing is you're actually kind of increasing your SoC displayed as your battery heats up and you start to drive. So that's why it stays at 100% for, I've driven mine like over 15 miles at 100% before. So, I always attribute it to the battery warming up as I'm just taking off.
So now let's talk go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
So I was going to say, and that goes to the same thing with the state of health. The same kind of situation happens. I know, Zach, you rented that EREV Lightning and drove it to Florida. It was a 10,000 mile, 8,000 mile standard range Lightning that had like a 95% state of health. 94% state of health. I mean, that truck
had 8,000 miles on it. 8,000 miles.
So that just tells you the battery was not treated properly. It wasn't cycled properly. It hadn't had time to
never charged 100% probably.
Yeah. And so when you do that, you hurt the health. But by the time you took that truck back, wasn't it like up to 97%?
96. So it kind of relearned itself basically by me cycling it. And I was cycling it down to 0 and charging it to 90 at fast chargers.
Is our friend Simon breaking news here? Did he just buy? Am I reading this wrong, Simon? Did you just go and buy a Lightning after you weren't going to buy a Lightning? Wait a minute.
He did. He texted me right before this podcast and said that he made the deal.
Bought a Lightning?
Signed the papers, and he bought a Lightning.
Look at Simon coming back to the family, buddy. Look at you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud.
Yeah, he's got some Patreons he's got to provide this early too. So we need to,
he's got to make it up because he did that video and didn't do it for his Patreons, and they probably got a bunch of messages like, "Hey man, you didn't do the Patreon exclusive."
He's trying to trick people, saying how mad he was for it, and
I'm going to post it right now. I'm going to post it. Late breaking news by Simon. I'm going to screenshot it. I'm gonna troll. No, I'm not gonna do that to him. But that's
so
awesome.
Anyway, this whole situation with the state of health and the voltages and stuff, we're getting into a little bit of the weeds, which is good. That's what Tech Charge is about. But to understand the battery health and what it does, but when you start talking about EREV and not cycling this battery, there are things that happen when you keep it at 40 to 60%, which is what the power boost does on the 1.5 kilowatt. It doesn't go to 100 and it doesn't go below 40 without, and that's not necessarily good for that battery.
But let's talk about the other extreme, right? Which is the brand. I don't know if you guys saw the Brandon Flash video that he just did. He was on a road trip and had the BMS sway where he was doing the DC charging and ran out at 5%. So what is happening on the other extreme of this conversation where poor guy died in an intersection, had to have somebody tow him over and give him a quick charge up. And his state of charge read 5%. And then when he goes and restarts the truck, it shows 0. So,
I don't think anybody's going to be able to answer what happens at the extremes, these anomalies. I have even one of the most seasoned Lightning drivers, and I had to have my brother or my son tow me 2 nights ago because I was driving back from about a 300-mile trip, and I know my truck so well, and I've done this same exact charger stop and trip so many times. I have driven my truck over 10 miles on 0 before, when it says 0 and when it says 0 miles. And I've been stranded a couple times. And this last night, I had a very similar thing happen. I was coming in, I had about 3 miles to the charger whenever my truck went to 0 miles. And I didn't make it. I made it about a 1/4 mile to the charger, and the truck just absolutely, the power went down to 3 or 4%, 4, I think. It used to be 3, by the way. I think they made some kind of weird change and ticked it up to 4%, but when it goes to 4%, you can't climb a grade at all. If there's any grade, you can't climb it. And there was the slightest grade on the highway, and I was just going like 10 miles an hour, and the truck just slowly came to a stop, and that was it. And when it gets down that low, and it's done, it will just shift it in park, and it won't move. And so you have to actually go into your screen and do emergency tow to put it in neutral. And I just had my son tow me down to the charger. And
which you made, hopefully you put it in drive and you made some power being towed to the charger.
I didn't. I didn't. I've never done that, but I have heard many people that have flat-toed Lightnings and regen charged,
You can.
and
They
it
do not
apparently works
recommend it.
great. Yeah, of course
Rivian
they don't
does.
recommend it.
Yeah.
They're not going to recommend that because
No.
it's actually, you know, the whole dynamic of that situation of the person pulling you, they might be pulling you too fast, you know, is a dangerous situation. But
But
yeah.
Lucid and Rivian will do it at really high state of kilowatt. I mean, it's like 150 to 200 kilowatts when you're pulling a Rivian or a Lucid like that. There's been some tests on those.
I want to hit up a couple things from Strapped Up. I'm assuming Strapped that maybe you're new to EVs, just with some of your questions, and so I do want to kind of hit up a couple of what you got here. Talk about the difference. Do you charge 100 or 80? There's a couple different answers to this, and you guys chime in here if I'm off base because you're definitely more expert when it comes to the batteries here. But I'm going to give you kind of three different answers to this. So one, traditionally, what you're going to hear that 80 tossed around a lot. 80 is kind of the standard because Tesla recommends charge to 80, so that becomes kind of the de facto standard. And so 80 is a safe number to kind of throw out there as a safe charging number. Within the Lightning world, we talk a lot about 90 because they built in such a big buffer with Ford that it's safe to charge to 90% with the Lightning, and you're going to be just fine because they have a very big buffer, and that's unique, very unique in the EV space to 90.
There's
with the
a
Lightning.
10% buffer at 100%.
Yes. So even when you're at 100%, you're really only at 90%. So Ford recommends 90 because in reality, due to that buffer on the Lightning, and is that with the Mach-E as well, guys, or is that unique to the Lightning that big
No, the
buffer?
Mach-E has a buffer too. I don't know the exact numbers. Now they did increase the GTs from 88 to 91 usable at some point, but yeah, they have a buffer too. Oh, actually, they all do. It's just the size of the buffer in the Lightning is considerably bigger.
So 80 is kind of the industry standard, with the exception being Ford with their buffer saying they're okay with 90. Now you're going to hear 100.
What do you do?
So I personally will typically charge to 80 anyway, just because I don't need it and because of my driving, what I need a week, and I just do it lower just because the battery health is happier if you keep it lower.
Do you plug in every night? Or not?
No, once a week. Like once a week I'll do it, but then if I have a 49er game or I'm going to go a distance, and this is where I'll get into the other part of the answer is what they were talking about earlier is once in a while to let the BMS calibrate itself. It is good to charge it to 100%, but you don't want to let it sit at 100%, and you also don't.
You need to let it sit there for 8 or 10 hours to let those bleed resistors do their thing, but not for days.
Not for days. So I will typically charge it and for the night, get it to 100% when I know that I'm going to in the morning go and take it somewhere.
Right.
And so then I'm going to go somewhere and I know I'm going to take that back down so it's not sitting at a high state of charge. And then I'm good to go. And then the other answer will be if you ever have a vehicle that has an LFP battery, and there are a few out 100%. There that have LFP batteries, they need to be at 100%, as like once a month, I think they recommend, which based on what we're saying, you should probably do it with ours, with the NMCs anyway. So yeah, it is good once a month to charge your battery regardless. LFP has a better tolerance to being charged at 100%. It's really getting into the nerd weeds, but yeah, that is kind of the answer there.
I've done 90 on all of my vehicles, everything, Tesla's, everything. I run everything to 90. Unless I know the next day I'm even thinking about going on a trip, then I'll bump it to 100. And I've never had any problems. Zach, I think you've been at 100 a lot.
No, I do a lot, but I do 90. That's how I've always had mine set from day one. I charge to 90, and that's because, Chris, you answered that perfectly. 80% actual SOC for lithium batteries is what the engineering battery chemistry experts say you shouldn't go beyond regularly. And so you're right, with the buffers that can easily translate to 90. And I learned that very early on with like the community and internet research. And so I've always done 90.
And then for his other question that I just kind of want to touch on, it's a hard one to answer, and I'll let you guys kind of give the opinion, but I do want to help him just because he is new to EVs. And it's a great debate because they're two totally different cars, in my opinion. 2024 long range Tesla.
I assume Model 3.
I wasn't sure if you want to chime in, if you're talking about Model 3 or Model Y. I was
Yeah.
thinking you might be talking about Model Y. But they are
Or
very
maybe
different
an
cars,
S,
3
but
or Y.
probably 3. So I own both of those. So I can
Yeah.
comment on that. We have Model 3s, we have Model S.
Model Y. He did say Model Y down there.
Okay, so Model Y, basically, between a Y, there's going to be some major differences. So the number one thing you're going to have different is the technology, and the Y is far superior. So if you're going to road trip this car and you're going to use the
Charging
stop
network,
and all that,
the app.
Model Y all day.
My wife has a Y. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then if you're one that just likes to get in the car and drive, like my wife drives a GT Performance Edition, it's a 21 model Mach-E. She doesn't use the navigation because she doesn't drive it far enough to need it. She likes the Android Auto. It comes on, her podcast is playing when she gets in the car. The seats are ready to go. Things are where she likes it. It's quiet, it's comfortable. It has knobs and buttons. Even though there is a big screen, there's a lot of knobs and buttons. So you get in a Model Y or a Model 3, they're basically the same platform. The form factor of the car is a little different, but they're basically the same car. You don't have the knobs and buttons and the tactile stuff. We just pulled my youngest or my middle daughter out of a Model 3 into a ICE Mustang because she was sick to death of not having. She has to open the glove box in the screen. Everything you do in one of those is in the screen. And so if that's something that you don't like, you probably ought to look at the Mach-E. But if you're a tech person, you like full self-driving, you like ease of supercharging. If you're going to one that supercharges a lot, my Mach-E has probably been supercharged 4 times. We just don't drive it on trips. We take the Lightning. And so that, to me, those are all things that factor in. If you're supercharging a lot, you're out on the road, you like full self-drive, you like ease, and you like the technology, Model Y. And I'm saying that as a Ford fan, a diehard Ford fan. If you don't care too much about that stuff and you like to me, the Mach-E is a more friendly enthusiast car.
I call the Mach-E more familiar. If you're more familiar feeling, I think, and you let me know what you think, Martin. I think that the Mach-E is a better ride than the Model Y. I think it's quieter. I think it's softer. I think it depends on what rims you have on the Model Y too.
Yeah, ours is pretty rough. And your
Mach-E is?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's got the bigger wheels, being a GT. But I have 2 Model S Teslas. They're going to give you the same effect. One with 19s and one with 21s. Totally different ride cars. Totally different ride.
The other big factor that he's talking about here is one is used. So you're talking about a used Model Y at 30,000 miles. The warranty goes to 50,000 miles, and 4 years, I believe, for the Model Y. Now with someone else has already taken the depreciation hit on that. So it depends on how long you're going to keep it, right? That's a good value, probably.
But I'd pick up a used Mach-E as well. I wouldn't buy a new one.
Yeah, and he's looking at a new Mach-E. So you're talking about higher payments. You're talking about probably getting 0% interest. So that's free money.
That does help.
But you're going to have to take the depreciation hit on that.
Yep.
And so that's your decision, right? On what's the better deal there. You've got a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty. And you've got 20,000 miles still left on the used Tesla. That's not a very big delta. I would say definitely test drive them both.
That's what it boiled down to.
Feel which one makes you happier.
Chris, you drove them both, and you guys picked a Y for your wife. Was there a standout thing that made that choice?
I think it was the technology, the app, being able to plug it in so easily. When she road tripped it to Disneyland, that was a no-brainer.
Well, it sounded like the lease cost was like the number one thing that helped you guys big time.
$260 with 0 down on the lease at the time for the used Model
Y
lease.
The gas and the Edge a month.
Yeah, it was. So the Edge was $200 a month for the Edge, about, depending on the driving. But yeah, you're already spending $200 a month in gas on the Edge, and this is $260 for the Y. And the lease term was perfect. It was going to expire in 2 years, which is about the time that a bunch of other exciting stuff was, the R2 and the new Ford stuff. So the timing worked out. There wasn't a 2-year lease with Ford on the Mach-E. The pricing was higher. There was no 0 down option with Ford. Yeah, so it just kind of everything kind of came together where there wasn't really a better option when everything
Yeah,
was
and
on
so
the
that,
table.
it's funny. The cost is, again, just like we started this conversation about Lightning and cost. We're back to cost because it's
Yeah.
a factor for most of us. There's not a lot of us that have an empty checkbook or an open checkbook. We can just write whatever we want, you know, because if that was me, I'd be in a max range Denali right now just because I want power and I want a huge battery, which is probably a good segue to, you know, we got about 40 minutes left of our normal 2 hour to talk about, you know, what's next, you know, for the Lightning and what we're trying to do, what Zach and I him and formerly Pat, which I'd like to bring that up. There's 3 of us that were working on this Everdrive concept, which for those listening that don't know what that is, when I keep mentioning that, is that it's a ability to charge the Lightning and future EVs eventually while you're moving. So put the truck in drive with a charger connected to the truck, not the left front fender, and drive the truck down the road accepting power. And I'm saying that like that because you could do that from a battery with an inverter. You could do that with a generator, which is what we are working on right now, just because the energy density of gasoline is tough to beat currently. You know, when you put enough battery in a Lightning to go back to back to back on trips, that makes it tough. So it's all about the use case. The Chevy, for most guys, has a 500-mile range. Most people don't drive more than 500 miles in a day. You know, and if you're not towing, that means you're not charging your truck either at a hotel or a fast charger once. And for me, I'm going to take a trip to Florida in a week running Everdrive with a huge Ford 28,000 watt generator. First time we've put that much power into a Lightning to make it run. Now, I do it every night at home. So there's been a lot of questions on, you know, you're going to make the truck charge while driving. What's that going to do to my warranty? What's that going to do to my truck? A lot of guys are scared to death of that. And I understand anytime you do something aftermarket to a vehicle, it doesn't matter what it is. You're opening yourself up for your warranty being voided by the manufacturer. But there's the Magnuson Act, and you can read about that says that they can't just void your warranty because you did something. But at the end of the day, it's got to prove that it had a problem. So what we love about our method and our application is we're not doing anything to the truck that the truck's not already doing every night when you plug it in at home. So we do add a connector that tees into the line. It's going to be plug and play, something you just disconnect and plug back in, factory connector that plugs in. It allows you to charge that truck while you're moving down the road, just like you charge it when you're plugged in at home at night. In fact, there's some video out there of Zach early on with a cord strapped over the top of the truck, plugged into the charge port and the fender, just because we're proving concepts here. And it works. It works well. But it totally depends on, as you'll see, so if you look back through Martin Meek on Facebook, through my posts, it totally depends on the application. So I drove over Thanksgiving to Florida in my Lightning, pulling a car trailer, a heavy car trailer, with a Mustang on it down and a Mach-E home. And it moved the needle about 40 miles per charge for me. So not a game changer. To listen to a big generator roaring and put $30 worth of gas in it every 350 miles, which was about what we were doing, it wasn't. But that was a 11.5 kilowatt charger towing at 75 miles an hour. So I was giving it the worst shot at being successful. So that test was kind of on purpose, because that is exactly what most 24s and 25s are going to do. They're going to, if you're trying to tow with your 24 or 25, you're only going to get 11.5 kilowatts max out of that truck. And you really need to know what it can do. So that's why we did the first test that way. The next test is an empty Lightning going to South Florida. I'm going to put 3,000 miles on my truck over Christmas with the big generator on a hitch carrier. I've chosen the hitch carrier to get it away from the truck. I still want my truck bed, and I want it to have that noise barrier behind the truck. So when I say a hitch carrier, not one you buy at Harbor Freight, it's a custom built that we're building here out of 2-inch heavy wall square tubing that generator will sit on top of. There's going to be full video on this. Everything's going to be shown quickly. And then the second thing is that you're going to have to use an EVSE, i.e. a charger that you have that can provide the truck however much power you want to provide it. So I could use the mobile charger and give it 30 amps and 6 kilowatts. Or I could use a Grizzly or an Emporia, which is what we've been doing, to give it 11.5 kilowatts. This time I have my backup Forge Charge Station Pro at 19 kilowatts that we're going to throw into this truck. So, you know, it's not proven what they can do with that yet, but at 65 mile an hour, my calculator, we built an Everdrive calculator, she's showing over 650 miles of range at 65 miles an hour. So that's always conservative or overly aggressive. Realistically, I think we're talking at probably in the 450 mile range for this truck on this trip, because I'm not going to drive 65. I'm not the guy that gets on the interstate and gets passed by everything on the road. I'm going to flow with the flow of traffic, you know, and that's usually, let's be honest, on interstates, most of us running 5 miles an hour over. So if it's a 75 mile an hour road, you're trying to run 80. I typically run 80 because that's the limit of Blue Cruise. With my truck having Blue Cruise, that's where I set it at. But if we run into a headwind, like Chris, you did coming back across Kansas, you're going to get 1.3. If you're in a tailwind, you're going to get 2.6. If it's a big tailwind. So it all depends on what you're doing with the truck. So we're trying to high level with Everdrive. We're trying to provide a solution that is a kit that you can put in your truck that is plug and play, that you can use it when you need it. The kit can stay in the truck all the time. It's a module and a wiring harness with a J1772 port somewhere. Mine is in the bed. You could mount it under the back, like your trailer plug. Lots of options here. So we're trying to provide that with the Lightning, because the Lightning works for everybody. If you swallow the cost of the truck, and that's the problem why they didn't sell, right? Once you swallow the cost of the truck, the only real downfall is range. So if you can have a generator that you could go rent or borrow from your brother-in-law or your dad, or buy one yourself, these big generators that we're running, it's a 28,000 Ford branded generator for $2,800 at Lowe's. So for what you're getting out of it, it's a huge generator. But you could go to Harbor Freight and buy their $1,500 Predator and it would work. It's all about how far you need to go. So if you're worried about just making it to that charger because it's cold, this will help that. If you're worried about going back to back chargers, maybe you want a bigger generator. And you really don't need any bigger than the truck will accept. So there's going to be a lot of questions on which one do I want? Do I need this? And
what about Martin? What about the difference between your trucks have the 80?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Amp charger and
yours having 48.
48, because it's not
so
just
you don't need that big a generator. So keep in mind, see ratings on generators, and I want to shift away from generators over to battery here in a minute, because we've had a lot of discussion on battery versus generator over the years. But yeah, so 80 amp, 22 and 23 ER trucks all have that. 24 and 5, I believe there are some special order trucks that you can get 80 amp charging, but most of those all are going to have 48 amp charging. So the Flash, the the Flash, the Lariat, and the Platinums, I think all have, Chris, I believe yours is 48 amp, right? Yeah. So that you don't get that high rate. So that there's a calculator on our, when we get our website going, you'll be able to go on and run that calculator live right on our website to say, hey, here's how big my battery is. Here's what I'm going to get for efficiency. Here's my range. Here's my drive time. That's already been built. We just haven't published that live yet. So batteries versus generator. And I want to pause and give a little bit of respect to a guy that we lost over Thanksgiving that has pioneered this 2 years ahead of all of us. So Patrick Chung was one of my best friends, and he's in Florida. He's the guy that did the first SR to ER swap. He's done a Leaf battery in the bed of a Lightning. He's done a Proterra pack out of a E-Lightning Motors van. The guy's kind of done it all ahead of Zach and I, but we're following in Pat's footsteps. And at the end of the day, before we lost Zach in a tragic airplane accident, I'm sorry, Zach, that's terrible. Since we lost Pat at a tragic airplane accident in New Mexico over Thanksgiving, he was driving a Silverado for the range because Pat was a big believer in batteries. He's a big believer in running a battery in the bed. So that's why early on we decided that Everdrive needed to be a system where you could put whatever power you wanted in that. Whether you want to put some home energy storage batteries in the bed for your trip, you want to convert a Tesla module into a box and run it that way, all you need is a 240 volt power supply that does at least the amperage that your EVSC is requiring. So if you have a mobile home charger that does 30 amps out of a Lightning or 32 on a Mach-E, you need enough power to supply that, and then you can put that back in the truck as you move. So it doesn't really matter what power where you get it from. You just need to decide what's right for you. So a lot of guys have like your Tesla Powerwall, Chris. How many kilowatts does that thing hold?
It's like 10 kilowatt hours, isn't it?
13. The original, I think, was 10. Mine's
so not huge. It'd get you 22 to 30 miles, depending on where you're driving. But if you were in a situation where 30 to 40 miles made that difference, you could throw that thing. If it's hardwired in, it's a little difficult. But if you have a stack of them, there's a lot of those that are stackable. You could just stack them in the bed, plug them in, and off you go. So Zach and I have been back and forth on this, and we're both pushing the generator idea right now because the energy density of fuel is much greater than it is of batteries currently. And it's more affordable. So you want to get 50 kilowatts of overall power back into the truck. You can do that a lot cheaper with a generator than you can with buying batteries. That's the bottom line.
You said it right the first time, Martin, and this was your main argument, or your main counter to Pat's always wanting to do batteries, is that when you're road tripping, you can fill up your generator anywhere instantly.
Yep.
So
5 minutes.
That to me, if you have it for road tripping purposes, then that's the way.
If you're going back-to-back charges, if you're like going 5 hours and you need one charge, maybe that would get you there on a battery in the bed that just gets you to your destination, like the Silverado or GMC does. It all depends on the trip and your use case. So yeah, that's the reason I'm going to go generator, because my trips are usually 2,000 to 4,000 miles, and I'm back-to-back charging, and I'm trying to extend that without, if you do another pack. So you take a Model S 85 kilowatt pack and you put that in the bed of the Lightning, which is manageable. It's not that heavy. It's 1,000 pounds. You can do that and take off. When you pull up to the charger, you're still replenishing 200 and some kilowatts at 400 volts, because there is a way to tie it into the truck where the BMS of the truck, which is it doesn't know, but it'll just sit there and charge it. So Patrick did that before we lost him in his truck. He had it, and it charged really fast. It was seeing like 213 kilowatts for a while, and then the cord started to overheat and it derated and like it's supposed to, and then it just took him longer. So he said, yeah, it works great, but in a Lightning, you can't charge over 500 amps, or 500 volts.
Yeah, 500 amps. You're right. That's what the charge port can handle.
So you're not going to charge over that, and that's why he moved on to a Silverado, because his use case was 300 to 400 miles a day, and he had to charge 2 or 3 times a day to get to where he was going. And a Silverado, he doesn't have to do that. So this is going to be a use case for a lot of guys that are towing a camper, and they need 100 miles, and now their SR they're only getting 70, and you can do that with 11.5 kilowatts. Or there's going to be a use case in the wintertime when you're just driving to Christmas and it's snowy and the truck's getting 1.3. This will give you that boost to be confident to get there, whether it's batteries or a generator.
Yeah, and we had on the forums, actually the majority of interest initially was people wanting to put extra batteries in their truck. So which I agree, because I honestly, the first time I rode in Zach's truck, he had that small Ford battery or generator in the bed. It was so loud, and there was so much noise, vibration, and harshness coming to the that
cab.
almost ruined it for you.
I hated it. I was not going to do this. And then you upgraded to the Westinghouse, which was a considerable difference. Then you could stand to be in the cab and you don't really notice it. And then we bought the Duramax, or got the Duramax from that crew to use. And I mounted that on my trailer tongue, and at 70 miles an hour, I couldn't even hear it running.
I mean, that was genius putting it. I like not only that you put it, where you couldn't hear it, but I even appreciate the safety aspect of having it outside of your truck.
Yep. Because
honestly,
inside the truck, you can't run that generator at a stoplight. It will shut itself off from the CO2, the sensor. And so back where I had it, it's out there in the open air. And for me, that just made more sense.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. If you're towing and you got a trailer and you're able to put it back there, I just think from so many aspects, even in terms of in a tragic circumstance when you're going down the open road and something were to occur, a flying projectile being right behind me, I'd rather it be back on the trailer. I would just rather it be.
Well, even non-trailering, I'm of the firm believer that on a hitch carrier, it's better for a trip. I don't like the fact that you're going to see it. Zach, I know you like to run it in the bed, just but I have a tonneau cover and I have to leave it half open. So it just depends on your use case. But I think with the point with Everdrive is it allows you to bring your own generator and put it wherever the hell you want to put it. If you want to, I started to say you put it in the front. You can't do that because it needs fresh air and it's hot. But you could put it in the bed, on a hitch carrier, on a trailer, whatever you want.
I mean, clearly, man, you inspired Ford. They're like, you know what, guys, what are we doing? They're in a boardroom. They're looking at, they're like, have you seen Zach, Pat, and Martin? What's happening here, fellas? Like, let's make this. And they're out to get you guys and steal the thunder. So,
except there's no indication at all that they're going to make this removable.
No. And that's the
what
thing with Everdrive.
Lightning owners want.
Yeah. So there's two different styles of range extending vehicles. The BMW i3 had a DC injectable power source, so it was actually putting it right to the DC bus to feed the motors. We're not doing it that way. We're using the AC side, the home charging side, to do this. And we did that on purpose because it's safe, it's proven. There's all kinds of safeties in that truck to keep it from messing up if something happens. So really, I started talking about the warranty earlier. We're just activating what's there. I have zero doubts that there will be some warranty claim that they try to blame on this at some point. But the truck's not going to mess up a battery module because you charged it with its own chargers.
Right. And we're not doing anything to defeat any kind of safeties or anything. The truck is actually very easily, happily charges itself while it's driving.
And so really the argument is going to be from a high level that yes, you're making it charge when it's driving. And we said, we don't want you to do that. But I think if you got down to it, it's not because it actually hurts something. There's probably liability from a Ford side to do that. But there are other.
Everybody that owns a Lightning would have already jerked the charger off their house if they didn't have that interlock. So that is totally necessary to not be able to put the truck in drive when the charge card's plugged in. So that's quite possibly the only thing that keeps Everdrive from happening anyway. So
yeah, same thing with the DC fast charger. If that port's open, you can't put it in drive. And so the question will then be, if you have Everdrive, or I pull it and plug into a port, is it going to blow up? No, we have it. Zach has it configured in software. When you open the charge door, the truck reverts back to 100% stock instantly. It disables everything from Everdrive. So you plug in, it's just like you had a factory Lightning. So you can't, with Everdrive in the back plugged into your J1772 port that you put in, you can't pull up and plug into a DC fast charger or a level 2 at a hotel and it now blow up because you're running 2 ports or whatever. It's going to think the truck's stock. It's going to charge it as stock and everything will work like it's supposed to. So I've had a lot of questions on when is this going to be out? How much is it going to cost? Does it hurt my warranty? Those are all great questions. We don't have the answers to all that yet. We're trying to source connectors. We're trying to source wiring harnesses. We're trying to source the J1772 plug and where that's going to be. And when we get all that stuff figured out, then we'll start talking pricing. I know by end of spring, we will be close. We're that close now. We actually have the ability to build and sell kits today, but it wouldn't be cost effective to do it in our pre-production environment. We have the connectors, we have the homemade, I say homemade, they're wiring harnesses that we can build, but that's not a good solution. Ford doesn't build their own wiring harnesses. They're having those professionally made. And I say that lightly because they may have some wiring manufacturing, but working for a large OEM myself, we don't build our own wiring harnesses. So Zach and I are looking at having those sourced. But when we get to that point, then we're going to have some pricing. But it will be, just put this out there. I know, Zach, you posted it today and I kind of cringed, but $2,000 to $3,000 is our target for this kit. That's what we're shooting for. Now, it might be $5 by the time we get it done, or it might be $9.99, depending on. I doubt it's on that low end because, if you just go on eBay and look for an extension cord for your electric vehicle, they're expensive. Just a J1772 extension cord, they're not cheap. So we have that and a module and a bunch of other stuff. And there's going to be some options. So when you get this kit, you're not just buying it, plug it in, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? The software in the truck will change a little bit. We're trying to actually give you the corrected guessometer that takes into account that range that we're adding. Up front, it looks like it's going to be that you buy an OBD2 adapter and you download Car Scanner and you run that as your ability to see how far you can go in your range and stuff. That's a good interim solution. We hope that later on it's more integrated with the truck itself. But for now, that's going to be what we're doing, at least initially. So lots more testing to go on there. And then you've got different years of trucks that we need to evaluate. So 24s, 25s are going to be a little bit different. We've already seen the difference between a 22 standard range, which Zach has, to my 23 extended range Lariat. And then we have a 23 XLT extended range at my shop that Zach's going to take and start doing testing with as well. So lots of variables there to go in. That leads us to why it's not out. Like, when is this going to be available? Well, those are all things that we have to make sure from engineers that we do our due diligence and make sure, number one, that it's safe, and number two, that it's reliable. So not for everybody. I get a lot of comments that no, I would never put a gas generator in my truck. I understand. I don't want one in mine. If we're being honest, I want batteries. I'm still working behind the scenes in tandem with Everdrive and the generator to figure out how to put batteries either under my trailer, in the bed of my truck, where the spare tire would go in the Lightning is another great spot for batteries. It is going to cut down on towing capacity a little bit, but for now, the energy density that you get out of gasoline, it for the energy you're put in it's a better solution for towing today. And I think that brings us back around to why Ford is pivoting towards the EREV. Cost, and people want range.
Simon's convinced they're going to put a V6 or a V8. I'm curious,
Oh, they won't be using the AC approach. 100%. It will not be an AC Everdrive system. You don't have enough to sustain it for that.
Yeah,
it'll be a DC generator.
I have no clue what Ford is doing or thinking. I have no insight. They don't tell us at all. And but you got a Bronco out there right now in China doing it today. There's an EREV Bronco right now. And if you're going to go and you're going to build a thing in China, and by build, I mean that the Chinese build, and you're not going to learn from the people that are doing it the best in the world today. If you have that partnership and you're not going to learn from the people that know what they're doing, what are we doing?
Right.
I mean, I got to think, if it's me, and it's not, and they're not asking me, but if it's me, I'm going to go to my Chinese partners who are doing it today and say, hey guys, how are you doing this EREV Bronco? And what works? China is not a small country. You know what I mean? They know what they're doing. And I just, I don't think, it doesn't seem to make sense to me that I would throw a typical gas engine into an EREV. I would think you would want a purpose, for the same reason I want a purpose-built electric skateboard powertrain. I want a purpose-built EREV motor. And I would look to the Chinese, Great to have you, Simon. Looking forward to seeing your video on what truck you have.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah. And Lightning Mike, he wants to be a test case. So let's
he's right where I'm at. He doesn't want anything to do with a generator, and I hear you. And if you're not towing a trailer, I agree. I'm going to run it because I'm testing to Florida, and I'll give everybody honest feedback with a open frame, huge 28,000 watt generator on a hitch carrier on a Lightning. And I'll tell you what I think. Is it too loud? Is it a mess? Because you are going to have to stop and charge. That's the difference between EREV and what for the EREV that Ford's going to do versus the, I'm going to call it an EREV for what we're doing with Everdrive. You'll never have enough with our system with the AC charging to propel the truck without still having to stop and charge. That's a fact.
Unless you want to go 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, unless you want to go 40 miles an hour.
Since I got the two intelligent engineering type guys, can I ask the adult idiot question? You're driving down the road 80 miles an hour. And I'm thinking back to like the paddle boat days, right? Where not a paddle boat, sorry, but like a windmill or water, you know what I'm saying? Like the water would move the paddle boat, right? But you could generate power. If you're going down the road and you have these little like squirrel cage type things attached to an alternator type device,
yeah,
with bearings, right? Really nice free flowing bearings. Why can't the wind?
Energy's not free, Chris. It will take the same. It always is inefficiency. You never get 100%. So if you did that, you would gain about 80 to 90% at very best of what it took to turn those wheels.
But the resistance would slow you down and drag you more than you would generate from the alternator.
That is okay, Zach.
Conservation,
what's that law?
Conservation of energy.
Yes.
The law of conservation of energy.
It does exist, and you can't get around it no matter what.
It's why there will never be, and there never has been, a perpetual motion machine.
Like I somehow I know that, and it's been repeated a million times, and it just seems like the wind.
Math is math.
Man.
Physics is physics. You can't beat it, and that's how. But you can help. So you could, do some crazy aerodynamic stuff to the Lightning and lower it, and that's why some of those look differently. So you could make the Lightning more efficient for sure.
More aero.
More arrow.
It's
a flying brick. It really is.
Like Kyle talks about how his Lightning doesn't have a Lightning, but when he would tow with a Lightning, it would actually do better than the Rivian, even though the Rivian was more efficient in general, because the Lightning would block more of the wind before it got to the trailer, and that the Rivian, being a more compact truck, that when it would when the wind would hit the big trailer, it would actually slow it down. Not slow it down, but more resistance.
Yeah, there are weird aerodynamics that can happen that way.
So this it's interesting, this comment about the Cannonball Rivian. Zach and I were on a private call about a year ago.
I did see
with
that
all
video.
of those guys.
Yeah,
they hit us up when we first started talking about this Everdrive concept. It wasn't named that at the time. But they have done this for a while, and they're all very intelligent engineers, and they all know what they're doing. And it's not easy to do the battery packs in the bed and manage the charging. Like, they're charging 2 packs off of 2 ports, which is what I have told Zach where I want to end up with the Lightning, but I want to be it on both fenders. So that's where we're headed, with my truck. And that'll be the next big, huge test thing. But it's going to be a lot of work, just like we saw on that. If you haven't looked up that Cannonball Rivian video, Aging Wheels, I think is the name of Robert's channel. He put it out, and it's fantastic video. Does a great job. But I think that's a good experiment to show you how difficult this can be, which is why for the average guy, that'll never happen. But Chris,
this is
our
why
kid,
you said, Martin, the best early on in Everdrive development, that's the whole reason why you didn't see us using batteries, is because how do you charge them on a long road trip? And you saw what they were doing on the Cannonball run with ice and having to buy ice and all this rigged stuff. And I love rigging and I love improvised engineering. So I love that video, but you're right, that can never be practical for somebody. So if anybody's to use batteries with Everdrive, they need to understand and watch that video, because those kind of are going to be one-time use batteries as far as like a trip, and you're going to have to charge those on your own, on your own time,
to your destination, or when you get back home. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, there's guys who could figure it out like they did. We'll probably have some guys that buy Everdrive and figure out how to recharge those batteries while they're at a charger, if they're capable of it. There'll be somebody who figures it out. But the nice thing about the AC side and using a generator is, Chris, you could do this. I could send you the kit. You could take it to your little local mechanic down there that you love so well. Have him throw it on there in a couple of hours. It's all plug and play. Rent yourself a generator from the Home Depot or from the rental store and take off to Southern California. That is something you could realistically do. That's the intent of our kit, to make the average guy who doesn't have to be an ASE certified mechanic to do this. But it is very cool to see guys putting, 300 kilowatts of pack in a Rivian and drive it across the states. I mean, I feel it because I'm taking this 3,000-mile road trip with a big ass generator hanging on the back of my Lightning, and I'm going to see if it'll go 600 miles. You feel like you're cutting new waves here, but I do think that Ford is on to something. That, we're on the same thing that they're on. We're just doing this I don't want to carry around a gas generator all the time. When I get home, that thing's going to sit in the shop, until the next trip. So that's part of the reason why I think the Lightning at 130 kilowatts, that's 260 miles of range on a summer day. That's good. I mean, and then you can bump it to 400 or 450 if you need to with a generator.
Yeah, you just kind of summarized my generic sales pitch for Everdrive, or my defense for it, when all of my Oklahoman oil and gas loving friends make fun of me for working on a project where we're putting a generator in a Lightning, is that if this project can enable a small amount of people to keep and use their Lightning where they wouldn't if they didn't have it, then it's promoted EVs, it's helped EVs, because that lets somebody use a Lightning for their everyday driver, but every once in a while take it on this longer trip. So,
well, I feel like the type of guy that's out there towing that would need Everdrive is the type of guy that probably already has a trailer, probably already has a generator,
or he already has a diesel pickup that he uses.
Yeah.
Chris's comment here, he's got, a diesel pickup, and I've had 30 diesel pickups. They're great. And towing is not, I wouldn't use the word doable, because I've done it more than most everybody. 100,000 miles, Canada, Colorado, Florida, heavy towing. Sergio proved that it can be done. Lots of people. It is about one thing: time.
Matt Lynn down in Texas.
Matt Lynn does it every day. He does it all the time. So it's about time. And if time is of the essence, get your diesel pickup. And I agree with that. I'm ready to buy one myself. I've been looking for another 6.7 for those times when I need to get there and get home. But on a trip,
did you just say 6.7? Did you just
6.7.
Shout out 6.7? Check you out.
Yeah, 6.7. 6.7. No, actually, I wonder if that's what the kids are referring to as the Power Stroke. I don't even know what it means, but I've been re-seeing it lately. Anyway.
My son just heard you 6.7.
6.7.
You got to get over here.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm too old for that, but I know it's a thing. So
you guys had it in California for about 2 weeks before we had it.
Yeah,
that's great.
Seems like you guys get a little ahead of us. So yeah, I think there's a towing case for a Lightning. It's going to be harder to justify Everdrive with towing, but if you're one of those guys like myself that's going to make the Lightning tow and going to make it work, it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, not doable is not the right description. It just costs you in time. That's the right.
Yeah.
That's
because they actually tow. I've had every diesel pickup made, Dodge, Ford, Chevy, all the way up to a 24 Platinum. It tows just as well at that tow rating of 10,000 pounds. When I'm towing other cars, other pickups, I'm more comfortable in the Lightning than I have been in any of my diesel pickups. Now, if you're going to talk about goosenecks or big Airstream RVs, the diesel truck handles it better. But the average guy is not hauling that.
When I'm doing, I do a lot of EV shows and events and expos and stuff around the Bay Area. And anytime I get those questions about towing or long distance stuff, the way I explain it is for just the normal person, as I say, when you're commuting, when you're just using it around town and you're using it as a daily driver, to me, it's a better technology. It's a better experience. And if you got charging at home, it's fantastic and you're going to love it. If you don't have charging at home, if you are a road trip warrior that's constantly doing big journeys, if you're towing long distances, you have to want to do it.
Yep.
And you absolutely can still do it.
Well said.
You can still charge at if once a week you want to go to your local supercharger, read a book, watch a show, and supercharge. Maybe you've got free charging, maybe, whatever it is, right? Because you live in an apartment.
Yeah.
Right. And if you are somebody that, is doing, you live in the Central Valley and you got to do these long distance drives, or you're going down to LA on a business trip every week, or you're doing long distance towing regularly, you can do all those things. You have to want to do it. And if you want to do it, you can absolutely do it. But the average person doesn't
they don't have
want
no
to do
patience
those
for that.
things. So that's where the EREV comes into play. And I've got a lot of folks that that are just friends of mine that live in the Central Valley, because the Bay Area is such an expensive place, and they drive their Super Duties. And I even think that sometimes when I'm talking about the Lightning, I always point out when I talk to people and they're like, well, I do X, Y, Z, they tow their work truck trailer behind it, right? It's not a big one. It's just like a little tool trailer or something, right? And I always ask them, what are you driving? And they'll say like a Ram 2500, or they'll say an F250. I'm like, you're making the wrong comparison. You're comparing a Super Duty to Lightning that doesn't replace that. They're not the same trucks.
But around town, those contractors, that's perfect truck for those guys. If I
there's
had a lawn care business, I would 100% be driving a Lightning to tow.
If you're living around town and doing that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys, what they're doing is they're living out in like the Central Valley of Tracy.
Yeah, that's tough.
And they're driving an hour and a half in, because that's where their houses cost, $400,000, versus in the Bay Area proper, it's, 1.2 million for the affordable ones. Right. So they're out buying a $500,000 house out in the Central Valley, driving an hour and a half in, working all of their job sites.
The case for a diesel pickup.
And then they're having to drive all the way back. And the electric, they're having to drive, and they can't, unless they've got best case scenario, they'd have to have an 80 amp charger to get charged up enough back and forth all the time. And the electrical rates in California, unless you have solar, it just becomes too cumbersome to do.
Yeah.
Diesel has got to be what you go with for those guys in the trades.
Yep.
And they're loaded up with ladder racks and filled with all kinds of stuff. And so it's just, there's a place where it just doesn't make, but an EREV would make a heck of a lot of sense for those guys paying their fuel prices.
But then you would ask, does it actually benefit you? Like, why are you doing that? Like, if you're that guy that you really need the diesel pickup, why an EREV? What's the draw? Is it just the electric power that you want? Because if you're burning gas anyway, I don't know. There's got to be a reason why. I think when we see these out, and they're out, because there's not an EREV truck on the market that's here.
Correct,
BYD is the Shark, but it's not here. Now, I will tell you that I had a conversation with Pat before we lost him, that he said, if you haven't driven a BYD Shark, you need to. He went to Mexico on a trip and drove one. He said, you need to drive one of those. So I'm kind of excited about that, because I trusted Pat's, and he had so much experience ahead of everybody else with doing all these different things. He said, this is the way to go. And I want to try one to see what it's like.
Yeah, Ford did a terrible disservice to the EV movement by not educating and promoting the truck right with their dealers.
Yes.
And Martin can speak to this. He had a salesman just flat out tell him that the Lightning can't tow, and it can't
walked on the lot.
Can't is the wrong word, right? It can tow, and in fact, it can tow better than any F-150 on the lot. Where it lacks is range and time, and range and time are the same thing when you're towing or going long distances. So, it being a couple of 1,000 pounds heavier makes it amazing for towing. And for the guys who just tow around town, like the lawn businesses or the small enclosed trailers for contractors that are around town, it actually is better than any F-150 for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
or even better, a lot of
our snowbirds, that thing handles the snow so well. When you take off of a parking lot that has some gravel on the edge and you're trying to get out in the traffic, the all-wheel drive, there's so many things that truck does better than a gas F-150. But it, again, Chris, you nailed it. I've said the same thing. Right tool, right job. Don't shove a screwdriver where a hammer belongs.
Adam talking about Ford needs to sell direct to customers. It's unfortunately I just don't ever see it happening.
Yeah.
I'm curious how even Volkswagen will do with their Scout brand. They've had a
Yep,
lot of
me too.
challenges with that. But yeah, Ford they fought the dealer model, and they tried a number of different ways. And it is an absolute challenge, and it is so well established that
But how many of us, Chris, with that establishment, when you walk into a dealership, do we like our experience? Do we truly like our experience?
it's a fight. It's a
I knew
fight
more
every
about the
time.
Lightning on the lot than any of the dealers, and I'd be willing to bet most of our viewers that are Lightning owners knew more about their truck and what they needed before they went to the dealership. And it should be the other way around.
I consider myself lucky that I have the relationships I do with so many dealers that I'm able to have some conversations with. And I've had some really honest, great conversations recently. And I had some, I make sure that like I'm the video that I'm making, it's all off the record. Like I don't name any dealers. I don't name any people because it's none of them want to be named. None of them want to be on video. So I just take the notes and I'm going to repeat what they told me. But the answers that I get from the people in Southern California are very different from the answers I get from the people in Tennessee, very different from the answers I get from the people in Kansas, very different than the answers that I get from the people here in the Bay Area, because the incentives are different that Ford offers. The market is different, and so how they're going to handle this transition is going to be different, and the deals that you're going to find are going to be different. I didn't go to Tennessee because I wanted to fly 2,000 miles to get my Lightning. That's where I had to go to find the deal. There was no way for me to get the deal I got anywhere on the West Coast.
And you probably didn't expect that deal for your salesman to be completely knowledgeable to get you back home from Tennessee to California.
Yeah. It's
you were on your own.
There's another person in the Lightning community now that is like, hey, I really want to get into a new Platinum. I want to get the 25. I want to get it under warranty. I know there's nothing else coming. I'm going to try to get one before they're gone. And been trying to find one, and they live up in Oregon, and we've been chatting with them, and there's just nothing here on the West Coast. Nobody will work with them on a price. They're all just MSRP. And there's some 0% interest deals and that kind of thing, but there's just not a deal to be had. And so if he wants to find one, he's going to have to, we got him connected with Ford, and Ford is going to extend what's called the A plan, which is the Ford, employee pricing basically. So he'll get some bit of a discount thanks to the A plan. But the real deals,
supply's got to outrun demand, or not outrun demand, and those Lightning prices are going to go up.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be, and it'll depend on the market. So, kind of a hint into what I'll have on the video, which hopefully I'll be able to put together by tomorrow night, if not by Saturday. The dealers out here in California are like, I've got 4 on my lot, and I'm in no hurry to sell them. If somebody doesn't pay me what I need, it's just gonna go. And then they were talking to me about, like, in their case, Mach-E's, what they were doing when the tax incentive was about to expire. They couldn't find enough Mach-E's, and they were going out of state and they were transferring Mach-E's by the truckload from states that couldn't move them. And so because if you can get a whole truck, like I think you can fit 9 or 11, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's 9
Mach-E's. You can fit 9. So it was like 9 on a truck, and they would just buy an entire truck of them, and they would find some dealer that had 9 of them sitting, and they would try to get the selects, because the selects would move, and they would just move them back to California, and they would sell them all. And so I think we're going to see that with the Lightning. We're going to see that the California, the Oregon, the Washington, Colorado, maybe if they've got some state incentives.
They said there's about 1,000 of them out there, is what I'm hearing, the numbers, if that's accurate.
I saw something the day the announcement was made that said there are 2 months at most Lightnings left on lots.
So what I kind of put together is that the dealers in Kansas and Tennessee will be happy to get rid of them if somebody will take them. And the ones in California and on the West are like, I'm in no hurry, and I'll take what I can find, and I'll bring it over. And
Yeah,
if
Florida
you
is another
want,
big one. Colorado's
yeah,
another big one. They all love it there. But you're right, Oklahoma. It's when I see a Lightning in Oklahoma and he doesn't wave at me, I think, what the heck happened? Because we're all,
yeah,
the guys who have them, we kind of know each other. And in California, you might see 50 Lightnings.
yeah. I mean, I'll see him every day, and so it's and here there are still incentives for, especially for fleet customers. There's a lot of things that are still
California
available.
incentives.
Still incentives, yeah, absolutely. And there are still things for businesses to get deals and discounts and rebates from the state. So yeah, there's a market there for sure. And I think what's going to happen is if you have a specific color, certain amount of options, certain trims, certain things that you want, you need to go and find it and get it
Now, because it's going to
now.
go away.
It's going to go away. There are 0% interest deals. There are things to be had. Go find the trim you want and grab it. If you really want the best deal and you're not particular about the trim or the color, what'll end up happening is, as it gets towards the end, when they're about to turn those deals off and they'll do some, right at the end, the dealers told me that Ford, right before, you'll see the best deals right before Ford themselves is going to stop doing the 0%, whatever that is. You'll start to see, factory rebates and stuff like that. When you start seeing those start to come, like, or dealer incentives and things to get rid of them, the 0% is about to end, but the inventory is going to be so low. It's like, hey, this is what's left, so you might have some better deals a month from now after New Year's with what's left, but you're not going to have very many choice options. And then you're talking about what's in the used market at that point.
Yeah. Which there's 100,000 of them out there, less the 5 or 6 I've built.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, but the used market is the best way right now. You can get some, it's tough. And I don't know what's going to happen in the used market. I've sold lots of Lariat rebuilt title Lightnings at 35 grand. They're 45,000 roughly. I don't know if they're going to go up or if it's going to start dropping. It's hard to say.
Yeah. And I asked about that too. I asked, like, hey, how are you guys feeling about trade-ins, for example? And I got 2, again, totally different answers. California, yeah, absolutely, trade it in. I'll give you value because I know I'll sell it. The guys that are out in the other parts of the country are like, man, I don't really want a trade in of them because they're not going to do well. So what I do then is I'm looking at they gave me a name of it. There's an auction. Shoot, I wrote it down. Let me click on this thing where my notes are. It was
Where they send EVs to auction.
MMR. Does MMR mean something?
MMR is you're talking about Mannheim. MMR is the rating.
Okay.
And so that's just the rating of all, that's for all cars, but there's a lot of auction sites, like Alex has got the EV Auto in Nevada, and he's got a couple other locations now. I think it's Alex. I follow him quite a bit. They buy a lot from auction, and you can get some clean deals on there if if the MMR rating is high.
So they basically said, I'm going to look at the MMR and I'm going to let that dictate what I value it at, because I'm not going to have it on my lot. I'm going to take it in strictly to go put it out to auction. And your California dealers are probably going to grab it off of auction because they know the problem with
MMR is trying to give you a average range and time. There's a big formula that goes into that, but with this just changing, a month from now it could look completely different. You might trade one in at 40,000 right now, thinking it'll bring 45, and it might bring 38. We don't know what the market's going to do yet.
And I think it's going to be regional. I think it's going to be very different depending on where you live. So I think you're not going to, in California, you're probably okay trying to trade something in, but you're not going to see as much value at it if you're somewhere else in the country. So I think it really does depend what you're trying to do. Yeah.
So it's hard to, like that question there. And I know Zach's replying to him. What would be the real world? He's asking the real world mile per gallon equivalent with Everdrive.
Yeah, that's not really that's not an answerable question, really.
Not yet. I can tell you that with the 11.5 kilowatt Duramax, which is a very instant specific, I was getting 32 miles to the gallon out of just the generator. You have to add the charging to that. So then there's the whole formula. That's probably going to be worse the bigger generator you go, and better the smaller you go, but the benefits go along with it. So we're going to have to come up with a model that shows here's how much it's going to cost you to equate it to a mile per gallon, because right now, like, what do you say? The Lightning's 70 mpge, which is not, it's not 70 mpge per cost when you talk about supercharging it all the time versus home charging it. So it
and
totally
where
depends on
are
a
you?
lot of factors.
You know, Chris is not paying 9 cents a kilowatt hour like we are.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I had to pay what you had to pay at the supercharger, I'm mad. I'm running Tesla all the way to Florida. It's 32 cents the whole way.
Yeah, I can't even get 32-cent electricity out here. Like there's
At home, let
At
alone a
home.
supercharger.
yeah, there's no there are no rate that there's no rate that I can buy at 32 cents where I live.
And that's I'm paying, I think mine's 2.9 and then it goes up to like 11 by the time you get all their transaction fees and everything. And I'm thinking I'm paying right at 11 cents kilowatt hour, but 32 cents is what Tesla typically charges around here for supercharging. It's like 42 on the plan with EA and then 45 to 65 with EVgo. Which we're going to run EV. You're going to see in the video, I'm actually stopping at EVgo's quite a bit because I had a guy give me a $500 gift card for EVgo that expires in the month. So we're going to burn his card out for him. But that past that, I'm going to stop at Tesla as much as I can, strictly for cost reasons. And I hate to say that because I like the experience at Iona. I like the experience at EVgo because it's usually at a better spot. There's more to do. The pull-through chargers like Power Up America's doing with Jesse and Josh, much better experience. But Tesla's cheap, and that's I don't know. I tend to be cheap on a road trip.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's what I respect the most about Tesla and appreciate about them is that they are true believers in the movement and what it is they talk about, and they could always increase the price on things or ask for more than they do, and they don't tend to. So I appreciate about them. I think that they do things.
well, there's no EREV option coming for them, right, Chris? I mean, we're not going to see that.
No, there's the drawback to them is they don't really give a crap what you think. They're going to do what they want to do. They listen. Cybertruck, yeah. I mean, God, I still to this day think if you could have just made that look, dude. If they made a truck that looked like the sign behind you, Martin, I mean,
yeah.
If they made it look like your Martin Rebuilds truck,
yeah,
just give it some arrow.
Which that's actually the Lightning profile, by the way.
Yeah, it just round it off. You know what I mean? Just give it
just
some
something.
Curves, something.
Make it look like. Did you see the rendering of the Ram Rev as the concept?
Yeah.
Make the Cybertruck look like that. I would have bought one the first day. I love the Cybertruck. I drove one. I did a review on it. I love the Cybertruck, but it's tough to live with. Just from the social side, people hate it.
Yeah, Adam. I don't even know if Mach-E is cost effective. I don't think they make money on the Mach-E either. Again, they're not very transparent.
Maybe cost effective for us to own it.
Oh, for us, I got you. Cost effective that way. Gotcha.
Maybe that way, but not for Ford. They don't make a lot of money on it. It's that batteries are expensive, and that's the problem.
I saw somebody on a video a few days ago that said that their opinion, the majority of the Cybertruck pre-orders that vaporized was because they promised the range extender option and then didn't, canceled it or whatnot. So, I mean, I was
going to give 150
that,
miles extension or 100 miles extension for $15,000, and they were going to sell that.
Yeah, and that's what it was battery, right? It was always battery.
Yep,
but it was to go in the bed. It was to go in the bed, and it was to be removable. And then they just released it without the provisions for it, and eventually said they're not going to do it.
Adam, we'll see if it ever gets made, but in theory, the Scout, if they make it, I still think Scout's going to go the way of Ford and only do an EREV. But if they make the BEV, the Scout would be a six passenger.
Well, but
truck.
That's the Harvester. That's not really a truck. The Rivian isn't really a truck. If you want a bed, I don't think there is a 6-passenger truck out there.
The Scout will have a bench, isn't it?
Well,
the Scout.
I guess is the Terra is going to be. We don't know. We haven't seen build sheets yet, but the Terra might be offered with a bench seat in the front, so you could have 6. But that's not comfortable.
Are people classifying the Rivian with the little tiny tailgate, the SUV with the little tailgate, as a truck?
Oh, that's a truck. You can tow with it. It's a truck. I've considered one. If I could get parts for them, I would have built one.
Yeah, that's a big
So,
problem with Rivian's is service and
yep,
parts.
that's the reason I don't
Well,
have one.
Huge
Yeah,
part.
and Rivian's expensive. It's a unibody. There's so many reasons that the Rivian
Just like
is a,
Chevy.
Oh, I didn't realize the Silverado was a unibody.
Oh yeah,
I-
yeah. You can't. It's unibody. That is a
that's a
purpose-built
big-
EV truck.
That is a big vehicle to be a unibody.
Well, it's
Yep.
like Cybertruck.
Same thing with Cybertruck.
Yep.
It has an
Cybertruck.
endoskeleton with that, and those panels just bolt on. I mean, there's no pickup box that bolts to a frame on anything but the Lightning and
Body on frame. That's the term,
That's it.
the industry
That's
term.
it. Yeah.
And
Well, guys, it's been like almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. We've had a long show tonight. Lots to talk about. We missed Jace. I think he's going to be sad to not chime in because Jace had I had some questions I was thinking about asking him. But
Yeah, I know he's got lots of thoughts to share on this. I mean, he's been there since the beginning. He's been such a huge part of the community. I think that's one of the hardest things, I think, is to see what could have been, to see the fall, to be, from what we imagined. But a big group of us, Ford was, had us all out to Detroit and, showed us, the prototype Lightning, and we just had an amazing experience, and we really, got together with the
it'll
Ford
be back, though, Chris.
Lightning.
It'll be back. They've done this twice now. 93 to 95, 99 to 04, now 22 to 25. It will be back.
Here's the thing, though. Why would they not just build 26s? They've already announced them. The factory's there. Everything's ready. It's almost like unless they have this EREV like planned and ready, which they don't.
They don't. I don't think.
Reason. Yeah, there's no reason for them to not just continue on making the poor selling Lightning. They've got a demand for it. It's not huge. Maybe it's one shift, but there's no reason for them to just not make them. Unless there's some other weird political things going on that's causing them to, make a statement by canceling it. It's bizarre.
Yep, it really is.
Forklifts, thank you for the shout out.
Yeah. Paul, it's good to have you. Everybody who commented, we appreciate the comments. Chris, since I brought us in tonight, why don't you take us home, and we'll try to do this again. I don't know if we'll hit next week being Christmas, but we'll try to do this again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that haven't seen it yet, on Bo Family EV, I do have a video out right now, just kind of giving my thoughts on the Lightning being canceled. So if you haven't checked that out, it'd be really great if you did. That would be cool and help the channel. So yeah, check that out on Bo Family EV. I am going to try to post something tomorrow night or Saturday, just giving my thoughts on the value of our truck and just the different conversations I've had with my dealership friends and what that looks like. And if you're out there trying to figure out, what if I'm on a lease? What if I'm in the market to buy one? I've got some different answers and some different thoughts on that I'm going to share on that video. So that should be fun. And we've got a Turn Down for a Watt coming out with Walter next week, Christmas week, from Out of Spec. So we got an interview that we recorded with him that we're going to post next week. So look forward to that on the channel. That was a lot of fun that we did. So we just appreciate everybody tuning in, hanging around for the chat. Great having Zach here.
And watch Martin Rebuilds and my personal on Facebook group, the Lightning Owners Group. You'll see 2 days after Christmas, we leave on like Saturday after Christmas to head to Florida. So we'll be running Everdrive. If you're really interested, I'm going to try to post stats and things along the way, like I normally do, if you're interested in that. So, and don't forget to subscribe to Chris's channel, to my channel, Turn Down for Watts. You can keep up on the latest stuff that we put out.
And then I'll just shout out some friends of the show, man. Like everybody knows Out of Spec, but for some of the other small channels out there, Simon's getting big, but for those that don't know, Trucked Up out there in Canada, Simon runs a great channel out there, always doing some crazy stuff. And so check out him at Trucked Up EVs. And Lightning Mike, who joined us earlier today. I'm not sure if he's still around. I think he had to bail out. We might do something tomorrow night. He was going to try to do some kind of like live thing. He and I might do a chat together. So we were looking at getting together. So keep your eye out for something from Mike and I tomorrow. And then they're not into chat, but a big accomplishment just from the EV Geek podcast, who just hit a new subscription milestone and viewership milestone. And Joel and Sebastian have been just doing some awesome stuff on their podcast and car reviews, and they always have great content. So I always like to shout out some of those small creators out there that they're not the big aging wheels and all that kind of stuff. That
we're doing it because we love it.
EV, yeah, right. None of us are making money on this stuff, and we do the content because we love to do it. So if you haven't heard of those guys or never seen those guys, like, check out their stuff, their content, and it's a lot of fun, so give them some love.
All right, I think that's a wrap, guys. I appreciate everybody joining, and we're gonna see you maybe tomorrow night, it sounds like, or at least in a couple of weeks. So everybody have a good night, and for now, that's Tech Charged. Have a good evening.
Yeah.